Chapter 829. During this time, Yiguchin had been living comfortably in the Han family's forge. The blacksmiths in the forge didn't dare let Yiguchin do any work. Instead, they were all eager to learn from Yiguchin. Master Dugu, may I ask how these two materials are fused together? Master Dugu, you can easily refine 100,000 metals. Do you have any tricks? These blacksmiths, who were usually extremely arrogant in the Han family, lowered their heads humbly in front of Yiguchin. Yiguchin wasn't stingy either. He'd received the inheritance of the Heaven Forge Sacred Hand, so any casual pointers from him would benefit these blacksmiths immensely. Even Han Ziqiang, who occasionally came to see Yiguchin in a sorry state, felt so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood when she saw this scene. Not only that, but Han Ziqiang also realized that, despite her identity as the second daughter of the Han family, she was the most unwelcome person in the forge. Second miss, this is the forge. Please leave. Second miss, please don't disturb Master Dugu's preaching and answering questions for us. Although these blacksmiths didn't dare go overboard due to Han Ziqiang's identity, their attitude was still extremely cold. This made Han Ziqiang feel like she was going crazy. Why did it feel like she was the one being targeted? Of course, Han Ziqiang didn't dare throw a tantrum in the forge. If all the blacksmiths left in a fit of anger, Han Shan would skin her alive. Humph, Dugu Wubai, what are you so proud of? Didn't you want the Great Sun Dragon origin fruit? Unfortunately, the Imperial Sword Steel will open in half a month. Big Brother Mubai and the Imperial family's Li Jingtian will come to comprehend it. Given their talents, they have the highest chance of comprehending it. Dream on if you want to obtain the sacred herb. Han Ziqiang couldn't take it anymore and left with her tail between her legs. Yiguchin couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't mind. Even Di Haoyan, Gu Xiaoyang, and other members of the 10 great dukes had suffered at his hands. He did not care about a mere sky pride from the Yun dynasty. For the next few days, Yiguchin spent his days leisurely. He was quietly waiting for the opening of the monument-seeking forest. As the day of the opening of the steel-seeking forest drew closer and closer, the flow of people in Tianyuan City became increasingly turbulent. All the geniuses in the Chu-Yun Empire started to gather in Tianyuan City, waiting for the Imperial Sword Tablet to open once a year. On this day, a figure riding a winged Pegasus streaked across the sky above Tianyuan City. It was a young man dressed in white. He had a scholarly face and was very handsome. He always had a faint smile on his face, causing many girls in Tianyuan City to scream when they saw him. It's the Shin family's young master Shin Mubai. He actually arrived at Tianyuan City in advance. Ah, it's young master Shin Mubai. Not only is he handsome, but he also has strength. I heard that his cultivation base is enough to enter the 5 great Dao academies of the Sword Dynasty to train. This time, young Master Shin Mubai is probably here for the Imperial Sword Tablet. I heard that he can't forget about Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian and Shin Mubai are the most promising pair. Of course, Prince Li Jingtian of the Imperial family is also very competitive. Following Shin Mubai's arrival, the entire Tianyuan City was in an uproar. It was obvious that Shin Mubai was very famous in the Chu-Yun Empire. Almost everyone knew him. Shin Mubai rode the winged Pegasus and landed in the Han family's residence. Han Shan even personally came out to welcome Shin Mubai. Actually, with Han Shan's status, welcoming Shin Mubai was condescending. But what he saw was Shin Mubai's potential to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. As long as the Han family could obtain an Imperial Sword technique, Han Shan did not mind lowering his status. Haha, nephew Shen, this time, the ones with the highest chance of comprehending the Imperial Sword Tablet are you and Li Jingtian of the Imperial family. I hope you won't disappoint me. Han Shan said with a smile. Compared to the cold attitude he had towards Yiguchin the other day, Han Shan was like a completely different person. I'll do my best. I'll go look for Lingxian. Shen Mubai smiled faintly. He looked very calm, as if victory was in his hands. Ha! That little girl, Lingxian, is still in closed-door cultivation. and she wants to comprehend the imperial sword steel by herself. Nephew, you can go look for Ziqiong and little Kuei to catch up with them first. Han Shan smiled amiably. He naturally knew that Shin Mubai had always admired his eldest daughter, Han Lingxian. Okay. Shin Mubai smiled and nodded. On the other side, Yi Guqian was meditating and adjusting his breath in his room. Because he had not obtained the sacred medicine, Yi Guqian was unable to cultivate. At this moment, the door of the room was opened. A lively figure in a light green robe flashed in. It was Han Xiaokuei. Xiaokuei, why are you free to come over? Yi Guqian smiled faintly. As the time for the imperial sword tablet to open approached, Han Xiaokuei also entered a state of cultivation. After all, the three sisters of the Han family also wanted to comprehend the imperial sword tablet. Even Han Ziqiong did not come looking for trouble with Yi Guqian these past few days. Isn't it because Shin Mubai is here again? Han Xiaokuei's round face scrunched up. There was a hint of disgust in her voice. Oh. Yi Guqian raised his eyelids slightly. He had heard the name Shin Mubai many times. He had heard it from Han Ziqiong and the people in the foundry. There were three most famous geniuses in the Yun dynasty. They were Han Lingxian, Shin Mubai, and Li Jingtian. The three of them were very famous in the Yun dynasty. However, in Yi Guqian's eyes, that was all there was to them. Not to mention Di Haotian, who was a peerless genius, even Princess Feng Shi, Crown Prince Xinghong, and other top geniuses in the preliminaries were stronger than the three of them. Therefore, Yi Guqian did not pay much attention to them. Humph, I feel that Shin Mubai's smile is very fake. He looks like a gentleman on the surface, but he is actually thinking of ways to woo Sister Lingxian. Previously, there was a genius who confessed to Sister Lingxian, but he was beaten to a pulp by Shin Mubai. Han Xiaokuei was obviously very disgusted with Shin Mubai. However, at that moment, Han Ziqiong's voice sounded from outside the room. Xiaokuei, why aren't you coming to see Brother Mubai? Humph. He still came. Han Xiaokuei's face was bitter. Yi Guqian saw the man in white standing beside Han Ziqiong. He was handsome and had a smile on his face. He looked very approachable and did not have the arrogance of a genius. Yi Guqian could also feel the sword essence that was faintly emitted from his body. Obviously, Shin Mubai was a genius who had comprehended the sword essence. However, Yi Guqian could also see the hidden arrogance in Shin Mubai's eyes. Obviously, Shin Mubai was not a person who was true to his appearance. Ha, Xiaokuei, we haven't seen each other for so long. Why don't you say hello? Shin Mubai laughed. Humph. Han Xiaokuei did not say a word and stood beside Yi Guqian. Compared to Shin Mubai, Yi Guqian made Han Xiaokuei feel more at ease. Oh, this brother is. Shin Mubai looked at Yi Guqian. When he saw the word iron on Yi Guqian's linen clothes, there was a hint of contempt in his eyes. Obviously, he also knew that this was clothes that only blacksmiths of the Han family would wear. Chapter 830. Ha, don't mention it. He's just a cripple without any cultivation. Han Ziqiong saw the confusion on Shin Mubai's face and immediately told him everything about Yi Guqian. Shin Mubai's expression was calm as he glanced at Yi Guqian. He indeed did not sense any true qi or soul ripples from Yi Guqian's body. As for sword intent, with Yi Guqian's cultivation level, he had long been able to restrain his aura. If he was unwilling, no one would be able to sense any sword intent ripples from his body. On the other hand, only people like Shin Mubai, who had a shallow understanding of sword intent, would faintly leak out sword intent ripples that could not be concealed. After sensing that Yi Guqian was not a threat at all, Shin Mubai also lost interest. He turned around and took out 2 jade bottles. With a hint of pride on his face, he said, "Consider this a meeting gift from me. It will be of great help to you in comprehending the martial arts in the steel-seeking forest." Brother Mubai, what is this? Han Ziqiong's eyes lit up. Ancient tree of enlightenment. Shin Mubai lifted his chin slightly with a hint of pride. What? It's actually the ancient tree of enlightenment? Han Ziqiang was really shocked. Her jaw almost dropped to the ground. The ancient tree of enlightenment was a precious item. It had the powerful effect of helping people to comprehend the Tao. It could be said that even among the sacred herbs, the ancient tree of enlightenment was an extremely rare existence. There was even an important person who wanted to use 10 sacred herbs to exchange for one ancient tree of enlightenment, but he did not succeed. The Han family's only sacred herb, the great sun dragon essence fruit, could not be compared to the ancient tree of enlightenment. Even Yi Guqin was slightly surprised. Although he had the ancient tree of enlightenment in his energy center, he had only found it in the cave abode of the supremacy of the Baiming family. It was understandable that an overlord-level force would have the ancient tree of enlightenment. But in this intermediate dynasty, there was actually someone who possessed an ancient tree of Tao comprehension. This was surprising. Of course this is not the complete enlightenment ancient tree. That kind of sacred medicine is so precious that even a leaf or a branch is hard to find. The thing in this bottle is the powder ground from the leaves of the enlightenment ancient tree. It was given to me by a friend from the Sword Dynasty. It is also helpful for my comprehension. Shen Mubai smiled faintly. His words seemed modest, but there was a trace of pride in his eyes. It was obvious that to him, giving away the leaves of enlightenment was already generous. Sure enough, after Han Ziqiang heard this, her eyes were extremely bright. She took a jade bottle and carefully opened it. Immediately, a faint trace of Tao rhyme filled the air. Han Ziqiang's face lit up with joy. Thank you, Big Brother Mubai. You're truly amazing. Not only were you able to befriend a genius from the Sword Dynasty, but you're also able to give such a precious item to us sisters. Han Ziqiang couldn't suppress the joy on her face. In her eyes, the leaf of enlightenment alone was extremely precious. This is nothing. Xiao Kuei, don't you want it? Shen Mubai still had a jade bottle in his hand. There was a trace of struggle in Han Xiaokui's pitch-black eyes. With the leaf of enlightenment ancient tree, it would definitely be of great help to her comprehension in the tablet-seeking forest. But Han Xiaokui didn't like Shen Mubai's hypocrisy. She felt a little uncomfortable accepting Shen Mubai's gift. Xiaokui, just take it. Among us 3 sisters, your comprehension is the lowest. You didn't have much comprehension in the tablet-seeking forest in the past. With the leaf of enlightenment ancient tree, you'll be able to gain something. Han Ziqiang persuaded. Han Xiaokui's face darkened when she heard this. I don't want it. Han Xiaokui became angry. She crossed her arms and pouted. I'm sorry, Big Brother Mubai. Third sister is not sensible. Han Ziqiang saw this and shook her head. It's okay. The tablet-seeking forest is about to open. Since Lingxian is still in seclusion, I'll take some time to teach you sword skills. It will be helpful for you to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet, Shen Mubai said slowly. Really? Big Brother Mubai is actually willing to teach us. Han Ziqiang felt so happy that she was about to faint. With the leaf of enlightenment ancient tree and Shen Mubai's guidance, Han Ziqiang felt that she would gain a lot from the tablet-seeking forest this time. Thinking of this, her gaze towards Shen Mubai could not help but contain a trace of tenderness. But Han Ziqiang also knew that Shen Mubai liked Han Lingxian. But in Han Ziqiang's heart, the person she admired the most, other than the mysterious person who saved her on the way, was Shen Mubai. Xiao Kuei, you come too, Shen Mubai said with a smile. Forget it. You guys go ahead. I'll just stay with Big Brother Dugu. Han Xiaokui was still very stubborn. She pulled Yi Guqin's arm. Oh. Can this blacksmith brother help you practice your sword skills? Shen Mubai smiled faintly. Although there was no obvious mockery, the words, blacksmith brother, were enough to express his disdain. Xiao Kuei, you really think that this cripple is a prodigy? Do you know how big of an opportunity you've missed? This is all thanks to Big Brother Mubai's guidance. Han Ziqiang was exasperated. Forget it. It seems that Xiao Kuei still has some misunderstandings about me. But it doesn't matter. I just hope that when the tablet-seeking forest opens, Xiao Kuei won't be sad. Seeing Han Xiaokuei reject his good intentions one after another, Shin Mubai's tone also became cold. He turned and left. Han Ziqiang looked at Han Xiaokuei with disappointment, then glared fiercely at Yi Guqin. Obviously, she thought that Yi Guqin had used flowery words to confuse Han Xiaokuei. Seeing the two leave, Han Xiaokuei, who had her hands on her hips and a face full of stubbornness, immediately lowered her little head. Her face revealed a sad expression. Han Ziqiang was actually right. Among the three Han sisters, Han Xiaokuei's comprehension was indeed the lowest. In the past, when the tablet-seeking forest opened, it was difficult for Han Xiaokuei to even comprehend a normal king-level sword technique, let alone the imperial sword tablet. If she had Shin Mubai's help this time, Han Xiaokuei could indeed improve greatly. Why? Are you very disappointed? Yi Guqin, who was standing at the side, looked calm and composed from the beginning to the end. I don't regret it. It's just that I'm afraid I'll be scolded by father again this time. Han Xiaokuei frowned and smiled bitterly. It's just sword technique comprehension. I can help you, Yi Guqin said lightly. Han Xiaokuei had saved his life, and Yi Guqin wanted to repay her. Big brother Dugu, don't comfort me. Han Xiaokuei smiled bitterly. It was not that she did not believe in Yi Guqin. It was just that Yi Guqin really could not be compared to Shin Mubai. This is for you. Yi Guqin flipped his wrist, and there were 5 leaves in his hand. Every leaf was like a carving, and there were mysterious patterns carved on it. As soon as the 5 leaves appeared, the entire room was filled with a strong Taoist rhyme. The fluctuation was many times stronger than the path understanding leaf powder. This is, the path understanding leaf. Han Xiaokuei casually glanced at it and did not pay much attention. However, when the Taoist rhyme appeared, Han Xiaokuei's eyes widened, and her pink little mouth opened into a circle. Chapter 831. If not for the clear Tao aura in the room, Han Xiaokuei could not imagine that the 5 leaves in Yi Guqin's hand were the legendary leaves of the Tree of Enlightenment. One had to know that a complete enlightenment ancient tree would only appear in some top dynasties or overlord forces. Even in the Sword Dynasty, the Tree of Enlightenment was a rare existence. Didn't you see the arrogance in Shin Mubai's eyes when he took out the Tree of Enlightenment powder? It was because it was rare that Shin Mubai showed that expression. But what Shin Mubai took out was merely the powder of the Tree of Enlightenment. It could not be compared to the real Tree of Enlightenment. Han Xiaokuei's little face was dazed. Her surprised expression looked rather adorable. I got this by chance. I only have these 5 leaves. You can take 1 or 2 when you practice your sword. When the Imperial Sword Monument opens, use another 1 or 2. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. It was not that he deliberately hid it from Han Xiaokuei. It was just that the Tree of Enlightenment was too precious. If Han Xiaokuei accidentally let it slip, after seeing the snobbish attitude of Han Shan and the rest, Yi Guqin really could not trust the Han family. This is too precious. I can't accept it. Han Xiaokuei stuttered. You saved my life. Is my life not worth these 5 leaves? Yi Guqin said. I see. Then thank you, brother Dugu. Han Xiaokuei could not hide the joy on her face. Han Ziqiang had only received some Tree of Enlightenment powder from Shin Mubai, and she was so grateful. If she knew that Yi Guqin had given her the Tree of Enlightenment, what expression would she have? Han Xiaokuei thought it was funny. In the next period of time, I will give you some pointers on your sword skills, Yi Guqin continued. Is brother Dugu still a sword cultivator? Han Xiaokuei's eyes lit up. I guess so. Yi Guqin did not reveal much. In fact, in the younger generation of the South Horizon region, there shouldn't be many sword cultivators more famous than Yi Guqin. After all, Yi Guqin had really made a name for himself in the Infinite Plains. But little Kuei's talent is too low. I'm afraid it won't work. Han Xiaokuei lowered her head when she thought of her own talent. It's fine. Hard work can make up for it. Besides, most of the time, it's not that you're stupid, but that you haven't found the right trick, Yiguchin said. If Yiguchin claimed to be second in understanding the way of the sword, it would be difficult for anyone to claim to be first. Han Xiaokuei clenched her fists and vowed, all right, Xiaokuei will work hard to cultivate. At the very least, I have to prove to Sister Ziqiong that I'm not inferior to her. Seeing this, Yiguchin was also a little curious. Han Ziqiong was under the guidance of Shinmubai. And Han Xiaokuei, who was under his guidance. Who would be able to shine brightly in the steel-seeking forest? For the next period of time, Yiguchin taught Han Xiaokuei in a secluded spot in the garden. Show me a sword technique at random, Yiguchin said calmly, standing with his hands behind his back. Alright, this is the king-level sword technique of the Han family, the willow leaf sword technique. Han Xiaokuei stood with her sword and began to display the sword technique. You're wrong. Every swordsmanship has its own essence. The core of the willow leaf sword technique is to be as graceful and agile as a willow leaf. There's softness in the hardness, and hardness in the softness, Yiguchin took a few glances and said directly. Han Xiaokuei was still confused when she heard this. She did not quite understand. Seeing this, Yiguchin casually picked up a branch. He did not use his real qi or anything. He just casually waved his hand, but the air seemed to vibrate. Yiguchin held the branch and struck it vertically. The soft branch cracked a huge rock beside him. This. Brother Dugu, have you practiced the willow leaf sword technique of the Han family? Han Xiaokuei asked incredulously. Every sword technique has its core. Once you grasp the core, you can roughly display it even if you only look at it a few times, Yiguchin said calmly. Han Xiaokuei's eyes were filled with unparalleled admiration. Now she knew that the young man she had saved was a genius in the way of the sword. The funny thing was that both Han Shan and Han Ziqiong had failed to recognize a genius like Yiguchin. With Yiguchin's simple guidance and the support of the Tree of Enlightenment, Han Xiaokuei was able to display her talent. Han Xiaokuei's improvement in the way of the sword was unimaginably fast. Even the best sword technique teacher in the Han family could not compare to Yiguchin. Han Xiaokuei began to have the confidence to shine in the forest of steels. Brother Dugu, can I be your disciple? After more than 10 days of teaching, Han Xiaokuei had become Yiguchin's little fangirl. Ha! I will teach you. Why do you care about the status of master and disciple? Yiguchin declined. Strictly speaking, Mu Xingzu was the only one who could be considered Yiguchin's disciple. I wonder where Mu Xingzu is now. Yiguchin sighed inwardly. However, with Ning teaching Mu Xingzu, he believed that Mu Xingzu would also grow up. Hearing Yiguchin's refusal, Han Xiaokuei was slightly disappointed, but she quickly pulled herself together. After more than 10 days, there were only a few days left until the opening of Emperor Li's sword steels. On this day, after teaching Han Xiaokuei, Yiguchin casually strolled in the quiet garden. It had to be said that as one of the 3 major forces in the Yun dynasty, the Han family's mansion was quite large. Although it was called a garden, it was more like a forest. The scenery was quiet, and there were the occasional chirping of insects and birds. After turning a small path, Yiguchin unexpectedly saw a cliff. On the cliff, there were countless sword marks, some deep, some shallow, some long, and some short. A place to practice the sword. Yiguchin glanced at the cliff and muttered. According to the trajectory of the sword marks, Yiguchin could simulate the way the sword was wielded. The sword marks are ethereal and agile. They must have been left by someone with slender bones and nimble wrists. There is also the remnant sword will and the fragrance in the wind. If I am not mistaken, this should be the place where Han Lingxian practiced the sword. Yiguchin thought for a moment and understood. He glanced at the cliff and frowned slightly. She has indeed grasped some of the essence of swordsmanship, but it is too rigid and inflexible. It is difficult for her to reach perfection. Yiguchin thought for a moment, then casually picked up a branch on the ground and left some words beside the cliff. Then, he looked at the cliff and shook the branch in his hand. Although it was just a branch, in Yiguchin's hand, it was as agile as a sharp sword. Many marks were left on the cliff, although they were much shallower than the original sword marks. However, what Yiguchin was holding was just an ordinary tree branch. As time passed, Yiguchin's mind became clearer. He closed his eyes. Vaguely, he felt that he was no longer holding a branch in his hand, but a sword. A branch could also be a sword. Yiguchin seemed to have returned to the past, when he was still sword demon Dugu Wubai. With a withered branch, he defeated all the sword experts in the world. This is, in the air, Su Qingyu's illusory primordial spirit appeared. He looked at Yiguchin, who was using the withered branch as a sword, with a faint look of surprise on his face. Is he comprehending sword will? But the fluctuation of sword will is too strong. Is it the supreme level, or the creation level? Chapter 832. In Yiguchin's previous life, he had comprehended 4 types of sword principles. Rigid and soft sword principle. Edgeless sword principle. All creation sword principle. Selfless sword principle. Rigid and soft sword principle was at the normal level. Edgeless sword principle was at the unique level. As for all creation sword principle, Yiguchin estimated it to be at the creation level. Before this, Yiguchin had split his attention to comprehend the 5 elements sword will and the Azura sword principle. Therefore, he had not started to comprehend the creation level all creation sword principle. But now, it was a coincidence. Yiguchin only held a withered branch and practiced in front of the cliff. Naturally, he came into contact with the opportunity of the all-creation sword principle. Although it did not mean that he had directly comprehended the all-creation sword principle, it was a good start. After practicing for a while, Yiguchin stood in place and closed his eyes. It was as if he was reminiscing about the feeling of enlightenment. Then, he slowly opened his dark eyes. There seemed to be sword light flashing in his eyes. Enlightenment is amazing. Yiguchin sighed in his heart. He did not expect that his casual action would give him the opportunity to comprehend the all-creation sword will. That was a powerful creation-level sword will. Perhaps in the entire sword dynasty, there were not many people who could possess the creation-level sword will. Yiguchin, what kind of sword will is this? I have never seen it before. Su Qingyu was slightly interested. This is the sword will that I created myself. It's called All Creation Sword Will. After mastering it, every blade of grass, tree, sun, moon, and stars can be a sword. Yiguchin muttered. Su Qingyu had never seen it before because the All Creation Sword principle was comprehended by Yiguchin himself. It was the creation-level sword principle that belonged to the sword devil. That was the most terrifying part. TSK, originally I did not have 100% confidence that you would go to the God Sword sect to save Little Sure. But now, I do believe it. Su Qingyu sighed. Yiguchin's talent in sword principle was beyond his expectations. He could comprehend a unique sword will on his own. Su Qingyu could not think of any other words to describe Yiguchin other than a monster. It's just the beginning. I still need a long time to comprehend it. Let's go back first. Yiguchin didn't stay for too long and went back. But not long after Yiguchin left, there was a beautiful figure who landed on the ground. It was a woman in her 20s. Her hair reached her waist, and she wore a sapphire blue dress. She had an excellent figure. Her jade peaks were plump, yet her waist was extremely slender. She was so slender that one could not help but want to hold her in one's arms and play with her. Her face was also quite delicate. She did not wear any makeup, her eyebrows were long and slender, and her eyes were like autumn water. She looked very reserved, giving people the feeling of an intellectual beauty. The closed-door cultivation is over. There are still a few days before the Imperial Sword Steel opens. Let's cultivate for a few more days. This woman was Han Lingxian, who had just come out of seclusion. She was also the most outstanding of the three sisters of the Han clan. As soon as she reached the cliff, she immediately felt that something was wrong. Is this the fluctuation of sword intent? Han Lingxian was slightly surprised, and then she frowned slightly. That cliff was her exclusive place to practice her sword. Normally, no one would step into it. After Han Lingxian got closer, she could feel the remnant sword intent. What a powerful sword intent! Even if it's just a remnant, the fluctuation is so intense. Han Lingxian was really surprised. She felt that every blade of grass, every tree, and even every rock around her seemed to be emitting a faint sword intent. That was strange. Who exactly is it? How can there be such a powerful sword intent? Could it be Shinmubai? Han Lingxian frowned slightly when she thought of that. As soon as she came out of seclusion, Han Shan immediately told Han Lingxian that Shinmubai was in the Han clan. As for Yi Guqin, Han Lingxian did not know about his existence. The remnant sword intent in front of her, and the fact that it was in her secret place of practice, Han Lingxian could not think of a second person other than Shinmubai, who had outstanding talent and had been pursuing her. Is he trying to attract my attention because of this? How long has it been since I last met Shinmubai? How can his sword intent be so strong? And didn't he comprehend the sword intent of rain? Or did he comprehend a new sword intent during this period of time? Han Lingxian thought, and her beautiful face turned serious. She was actually a little disgusted with Shinmubai because she vaguely sensed that Shinmubai was hypocritical. But because the Han clan and the Shin clan were on good terms, and Shinmubai was indeed meticulous to her, Han Lingxian could only let it be. Just as Han Lingxian was thinking, her gaze fell on the cliff, and her face froze. Even with her reserved and indifferent temperament, her jade face could not help but reveal an astonished expression. Han Lingxian saw the new sword mark left on the cliff. Although the power behind his attack was weak, the trajectory of his sword was much more perfect than the one she had unleashed. It's really Shinmubai. Han Lingxian muttered to herself in a daze. Because the two clans were on good terms, Shinmubai also knew some of the Han clan's swordsmanship. Seeing the sword mark on the cliff, Han Lingxuan's first thought was how Shinmubai had mastered the Han clan's swordsmanship to such a perfect level. Han Lingxian looked down again and saw the words left on the ground. The way of the sword is to achieve perfection through all changes. This sentence was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in Han Lingxuan's mind. She was enlightened, and her state of mind was clear. It was a simple sentence, but it made her feel like she had woken up from a dream. Han Lingxian did not care about anything else and started to draw her sword. The trajectory of her sword was agile and ethereal. Finally, it changed again and merged together. Swoosh! The sword light flashed and swept across the sky. I broke through just like that. Han Lingxian was a little dazed. Her swordsmanship had been stuck at the stage of great success. At this moment, she had comprehended them to the extreme and had directly stepped into the realm of perfection. Shinmubai, your words woke me up. Han Lingxuan's mind was very clear, but she could not hide her surprise. She remembered that Shinmubai's swordsmanship realm was about the same as hers in the past. How did Shinmubai reach such a realm in such a short time? Han Lingxian could not compare to him. Not only that, Han Lingxian also saw a branch at the edge of the cliff. Could it be that the sword mark is? Han Lingxuan's beautiful eyes froze immediately. She had been puzzled just now. Given Shinmubai's strength, the sword mark he left should not be so shallow. No wonder he used a branch as a sword. No wonder the sword mark is so shallow. Shinmubai, you really made me look at you differently this time. While Han Lingxian was shocked, she was also a little dazed. She was originally a little resistant to Shinmubai. But now, not only did Shinmubai leave behind words to guide her, but he also displayed an extraordinary level of swordsmanship. Han Lingxian could not help but wonder if Shinmubai, who was so sincere about swordsmanship, was a hypocrite. Maybe I am biased, but when the Imperial Sword Tablet opens, I must thank Shinmubai. With the level of swordsmanship he displayed, he might really be able to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet this time. Han Lingxian muttered and was a little absent-minded. Chapter 833. In the blink of an eye, Yi Guqin had stayed in the Han family for more than a month. The day of the opening of the Stone Tablet Forest had finally arrived. On that day, the entire Tianyuan city was bustling with activity. There were more than 300,000 people who entered the bustling city. Most of them were from the various big families and there were many young talents. They were all in high spirits and wanted to grab the rare opportunity to enter the Stone Tablet Forest. Of course, there were also people who wanted to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet and marry one of the Han sisters. That would be a meteoric rise. In a room, Yi Guqin, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, opened his eyes. He was in good spirits. Although his abilities had not recovered, his complexion had recovered. I must get the Great Sun Dragon Origin Fruit, Yi Guqin muttered. It was not only related to the recovery of his physical body, but it was also related to whether Yi Guqin could break through to become a 2-star ancient god. Without abilities, there would be no sense of security. Brother Dugu, we are about to set off for the Stone Tablet Forest. The door was pushed open and Han Xiaokui was in high spirits. Although she was very lively before, there was a faint feeling of lack of confidence. Over the past few days, after Yi Guqin's guidance, Han Xiaokui had improved rapidly and she had become more confident. All right, Yi Guqin smiled faintly. Humph, I must let second sister and the rest see that under Brother Dugu's guidance, I am also a genius. Han Xiaokui clenched her fists and snorted. It was obvious that she was still brooding over Shinmubai and Han Ziqiang's belittlement. Han Xiaokui could not imagine that Yi Guqin's casual guidance would have such an effect. How powerful would Yi Guqin's talent in the sword principle be? My judgment will not be wrong. Han Xiaokui muttered to herself. After that, Han Xiaokui brought Yi Guqin to the hall to meet the Han family. The hall of the Han family was filled with people. As one of the 3 big forces in the Chuyun dynasty, the Han family had a large population. Apart from the 3 sisters, the Han family also had many young talents. At this moment, the hall was bustling with noise. Han Shan, Han Ziqiang, and Shinmubai were all present, but Han Lingxian had yet to arrive. Shinmubai was surrounded by a group of young elites of the Han family, like stars surrounding the moon. Brother Mubai, let me call you brother-in-law in advance. Ha, Big Brother Mubai has the highest chance of comprehending the Imperial Sword Steel this time. Even Li Jingtian from the Imperial family is probably no match for Big Brother Mubai. A group of people were flattering Shinmubai. This was because Shinmubai had given them a lot of small favors and even gave them a few pointers. From this, one could see Shinmubai's scheming nature. Ha, you flatter me. Shinmubai revealed his signature smile. Han Ziqiang, who was watching from the side, was mesmerized. Someone like Shinmubai, who had talent, strength, and a humble character, was the kind of person she liked. During this period of time, under Shinmubai's guidance, Han Ziqiang also felt that she had made rapid progress. Perhaps this time, I won't be weaker than Sister Ling Xian. Han Ziqiang was filled with confidence. Just as the atmosphere was lively, 2 figures walked into the hall. 2 figures slowly walked into the hall. They were Han Xiaokui and Yi Guqin. When the 2 of them arrived, the lively atmosphere in the hall quieted down. Many of the young elites of the Han family were puzzled when they saw the word iron on Yi Guqin's linen robe. Sister Xiaokui, who is this person? Why did you bring the blacksmith from the foundry here? Some of them were puzzled. Although Yi Guqin had been in the Han family for more than a month, it was obvious that not many people knew him. He is my teacher. All of you should be more respectful. Han Xiaokui pouted and said. Although Yi Guqin did not admit it, Han Xiaokui had already treated him as her teacher. Xiaokui, we are about to depart. What are you doing? Han Shan frowned when he saw this. He looked at Yi Guqin with an increasingly impatient gaze. Han Shan thought that Han Xiaokui had been deceived by Yi Guqin. What right did a person who did not even have martial arts cultivation have to be his daughter's teacher? Everyone, this person is the Dugu Wubai that I mentioned before. He is just an ordinary person, but he likes to put on an act. He even deceived the naive third sister. Han Ziqiang's tone was mocking as she told them about Yi Guqin. What? There's such a thing. This Dugu Wubai came to the Han clan to cheat us out of food and drink. After hearing Han Ziqiang's words, all of the young elites of the Han family glared at Yi Guqin with resentment. A useless person dared to deceive the Han family. No, you don't know how powerful Brother Dugu is. Han Xiaokui's face was flushed red. She wanted to defend herself, but she was drowned out by the loud voices. If that's the case, when the tablet-seeking forest opens, do you dare to compete with me? I have been taught by Brother Mubai these few days, and my understanding is much better than before. Seeing this, Han Ziqiang lifted her chin slightly, showing a hint of pride. Shen Mubai did not say anything and only smiled faintly. In his eyes, Yi Guqin was as laughable as a clown. Let's compete, second sister. You will regret it. Han Xiaokui said angrily. Sigh, looks like Sister Xiaokui is going to lose. Yeah, Sister Ziqiang not only has Brother Mubai to teach her, but she also has the help of the Tree of Enlightenment powder. Sister Xiaokui is no match for her. The young elites of the Han family all shook their heads, thinking that the outcome was already decided. What nonsense! Han Shan's expression was ugly. His good daughter had been taught to have such a temper by an outsider. Han Shan decided that after the tablet-seeking forest, he would find an excuse to send Yi Guqin away. At this moment, a pair of slender legs stepped into the hall. It was a woman in a sapphire blue dress. Her black hair was like a waterfall, falling straight to her shoulders. She did not have any makeup on her face, and it was naturally carved, but it was very delicate and beautiful. However, the most attractive thing about her was her excellent figure. Especially her full breasts, which formed a shocking contrast with her slender waist. It made people unable to take their eyes off her, and they could not help but want to hug her slender waist. The woman who had come was Han Lingxian, the most talented and beautiful of the three sisters of the Han family. Sister Lingxian is here. Sister Lingxian might also be able to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet this time. When they saw Han Lingxian arrive, the eyes of the young elites of the Han family lit up, and their faces were filled with admiration. However, they knew their own limits. Although Han Lingxian was not particularly cold, she was not very friendly either. Previously, even when Shen Mubai was pursuing her, Han Lingxian did not have much of a reaction. She is Han Lingxian. Yi Guqin glanced at Han Lingxian, then retracted his gaze. Although Han Lingxuan's beauty and talent were top-notch, she could not be compared to Situ Hongxue, Su Jianshi, and the others. Han Lingxian also felt Yi Guqin's gaze. She looked at Yi Guqin's blacksmith's clothes. She did not show any disdain like the other members of the Han family, but she also did not pay much attention to Yi Guqin. Han Lingxian walked directly to Shen Mubai. She hesitated for a moment, but she still took a deep breath and said, "Young Master Shen, thank you very much." Chapter 834. Han Lingxian stood in front of Shen Mubai. Although she was a little hesitant, she still spoke. The entire hall quieted down. All the Han family elites were dumbfounded. Even Han Shan was looking at his eldest daughter with a puzzled expression. Why was she suddenly thanking Shen Mubai? Even Shen Mubai himself was a little confused, let alone the others. However, he was very scheming and did not show it on his face. Instead, he asked tentatively, "Lingxian, I don't know what you're talking about." Since Lingxian already knows, you don't have to hide it anymore. Lingxian admits that she was biased against you. When Han Lingxian saw this, she laughed self-deprecatingly. She did not expect that the person she had thought was a hypocrite was a true Sword Dao Grandmaster. Oh, is that so? Shen Mubai's expression did not change. However, He was already overjoyed. This was simply a gift from the heavens. Han Lingxian had always been biased against him and thought that he was a hypocrite. In fact, that was indeed the case. However, Shen Mubai did not expect Han Lingxian to take the initiative to apologize to him. You left a sword mark and a message at the place where Lingxian practiced her sword. You enlightened Lingxian and enlightened Lingxian. Lingxian will repay this favor, Han Lingxian said in a clear voice. So that's how it is. Brother Mubai hid his skills well. His sword Dao cultivation is actually enough to guide sister Lingxian. When they heard Han Lingshuan's words, all the Han family disciples were shocked. So Brother Mubai was hiding something. Han Ziqiang's beautiful eyes were also shocked. She could not help but admire Shen Mubai even more. His sword Dao has already surpassed Lingshuan's. Even the family leader, Han Shan's expression changed slightly. If that was the case, it was indeed necessary to rope Shen Mubai in. How could this be? When Han Xiaokui saw this, she bit her lip and did not speak. Shen Mubai's sword Dao had actually surpassed her elder sister, whom she admired the most. This made Han Xiaokui a little unhappy. Yi Guqin was the only one who had a strange look in his eyes. Han Lingxian seemed to have misunderstood something. As for Shen Mubai, he did not have any intention of explaining himself. He simply smiled faintly, appearing to have a profound and calm temperament. Of course, Yi Guqin did not explain anything. He was now the target of hatred in the Han family. Even if he said it out loud, it would only cause them to target and ridicule him even more. In any case, the steel-seeking forest was about to open. When the time came, the truth would be revealed. Yi Guqin was too lazy to explain. Alright, nephew Chen, it looks like you have the greatest hope of comprehending the Imperial Sword Tablet this time. At that time, don't disappoint uncle. Han Shan was all smiles. He even addressed himself as uncle. Father. Han Lingxian frowned. Although she was grateful for Shen Mubai's advice, it did not mean that she would marry Shen Mubai. I'll naturally do my best for Lingxian. I'll definitely comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel. Shen Mubai was confident in himself. He cupped his hands and smiled. Alright, there's no time to lose. Let's go. Han Shan was in a good mood. It was obvious that he thought that the Han family would definitely obtain the Imperial Sword technique this time. Sister, follow me. Han Lingxian waved at Han Xiaokui. No, I'll be with Brother Dugu. Han Xiaokui pulled Yi Guqin's arm. Han Lingxian glanced at Yi Guqin indifferently. She did not feel any fluctuation of true qi from him. Alright. When the time comes, if you have any difficulty comprehending the inscriptions, come to my side. Han Lingxian did not say much. Obviously, she did not think that Yi Guqin would be able to help Han Xiaokui. Next, a large group of people from the Han family rushed out on the flying boat. Shen Mubai and Han Lingxian were surrounded in the center. Yi Guqin and Han Xiaokui stood in a remote corner of the flying boat. They looked very out of place. The Han family's sword-seeking steel was not in Tianyuan City. In a mountain range 100 miles outside of Tianyuan City. The Han family's flying boat rushed out of the mansion. The entire Tianyuan City, more than 300,000 people, followed the Han family's flying boat. Of course, not everyone could enter the steel-seeking forest. Most of the warriors were just there to watch the show. Only the true elites and disciples of the aristocratic families were qualified to enter. About a quarter of an hour later, Yi Guqin finally saw the mountain range. The mountain range was undulating, and there were many stone steels in it. These stone steels were gathered together, and there was an extremely dense sword-based Taoist rhyme. Yi Guqin also felt that there was an even more dense Taoist rhyme in the depths of the mountain range. That should be the location of the Imperial Sword Steel. Yi Guqin's eyes were deep as he looked into the depths of the mountain range. The Han family's flying boat landed outside the mountain range. A group of people walked down. Outside the steel-seeking forest, there was a sealing array that had been passed down. Only Han Shan had the token to unlock the array. As expected, the steel-seeking forest now has a denser Daoist rhyme than before, Shen Mubai said as his eyes glowed. He was getting more confident in himself. At that moment, a flying boat came from afar. The person in front was a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance. The Shin family is here. That's the head of the Shin family, Shin Lai. Some of the surrounding warriors who came to watch the show shouted. Shin Lai was also a first-level heaven supremacy, and he laughed heartily. Ha, Brother Han, it seems like we are going to be in-laws soon. What he meant was that Shin Mubai would definitely comprehend the imperial sword steel and marry Han Lingxian. Let's wait and see. Han Shan also cupped his fists and smiled. At that moment, another golden flying boat came from the other side of the sky. It was extremely luxurious. It's the royal family. Oh my god, even Emperor Lianyun is here. Everyone's eyeballs were about to pop out. Standing at the front of the golden flying boat was a man in a golden robe. He was the emperor of the Outcloud dynasty, the Cloud Emperor. Beside him was a young man and a young woman. The man was in a dark golden robe, and his aura and appearance were not inferior to Shin Mubai's. The other woman was in a golden feather dress, and she was extremely beautiful. It's Li Jingtian and Li Nianyao, a disciple from an aristocratic family shouted. Li Jingtian, Shin Mubai, and Han Lingxian were the three supreme talents of the Outcloud dynasty. Li Nianyao was also a proud daughter of the royal family. She was slightly weaker than Li Jingtian, but not by much. Ha, I didn't expect the Cloud Emperor to come. Seeing the Cloud Emperor, Shin Lai smiled insincerely. The three supreme forces of the Outcloud dynasty were the Li family, the Shin family, and the Han family. There was no doubt about the Cloud Emperor's purpose for coming this time. If Shin Mubai really comprehended the imperial sword steel and married Han Lingxian, the Shin family would be allied with the Han Lingxian. That would be equivalent to the Shin family and the Han family forming an alliance. What kind of status would the imperial family have? That was why the Cloud Emperor had personally come to supervise. He wanted Li Jingtian to surpass Shin Mubai and comprehend the imperial sword steel. Brother, Nianyao believes that you are not weaker than Shin Mubai. Strive to marry Han Lingxian as your sister-in-law. Li Nianyao was very confident in Li Jingtian and encouraged him. I hope so. Li Jingtian smiled slightly. But he also felt that Shin Mubai was scheming. This time, he would not be unprepared for the imperial sword steel. At that time, it was hard to say who would surpass who. Chapter 835. As the three major forces of the Outcloud dynasty arrived. The atmosphere outside the steel-seeking forest was high. There were more than 300,000 warriors gathered outside the steel-seeking forest. They were discussing the steel-seeking forest enthusiastically. I think young Master Shin Mubai is going to take first place this time. Prince Li Jingtian is not bad either. Hee, don't underestimate the three flowers of the Han family. They are not weak either. That person standing beside Han Xiaokui. Is he a blacksmith? The steel-seeking forest was about to open, and many geniuses were paying attention to it. The three sisters of the Han family were no exception. Soon, the surrounding warriors noticed Yi Gu Chen, who was standing beside Han Xiaokui. Just the word iron on Yi Gu Chen's shirt was enough to attract people's attention. Many of the people present immediately recognized that it was the shirt of the Han family's blacksmith. How could Han Xiaokui be with a blacksmith? I heard from the Han family that the blacksmith is called Duga Wubai. He seems to be Han Xiaokui's master. What? Are you kidding me? A person with no martial arts cultivation can become Han Xiaokui's master. Is the Han family unable to find a sword master? The discussion about Yi Guchen was like a tidal wave. Third sister, you have brought honor to the Han family. Now everyone is saying that the Han family can't afford a sword master and needs a blacksmith to make up the numbers. Han Ziqiang shook her head and sneered. Han Xiaokui was annoyed and stomped her feet angrily. Calm your mind, focus, and prepare to comprehend, Yi Guqin said calmly. Yes. Han Xiaokui took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Humph. Pretentious, looking at Yi Guqin's indifferent look, Han Ziqiang was angry. Third sister, don't forget that you have to compete with me to see whose comprehension is higher. Han Ziqiang did not forget to remind her. I know. Han Xiaokui's eyes were filled with confidence. With Yi Guqin's guidance, she believed that she would amaze the world. Finally, at some point, the Dao presence in the boulder-seeking woods had reached its peak. Han Shan took a step forward and took out a jade seal. Then, he poured his true qi into it. In an instant, countless runes appeared on the ground outside the steel-seeking forest before disappearing. The steel-seeking forest had finally opened. The steel-seeking forest has opened. Let's enter. Among the 300,000 martial artists, only a small portion of the geniuses from the aristocratic families were qualified to enter. These people were like a swarm of locusts, rushing into the tablet-seeking forest. On the other hand, the elites of the three great forces were indifferent as they stood where they were. The steel-seeking forest would be open for a month, so they were not in a hurry. These are just cannon fodder. Shenmubai murmured in his heart as a faint smile appeared on his face. Although many people had rushed in, only less than 1 out of 10 could truly comprehend the swordsmanship martial arts on the stone tablet. Shenmubai, Li Jingtian, and the Han sisters were all biding their time. Isn't this stone tablet a little too profound? Why do I feel like I can't even comprehend the outermost steels? Not long after the steel-seeking forest opened, the disciples of the aristocratic families who had rushed in to comprehend the steels all had ugly expressions. The difficulty of comprehending the steels in the steel-seeking forest increased from the outside to the inside. However, they realized that even the outermost steels were difficult to comprehend. Not to mention the steels in the depths. Very quickly, a day passed. Many of the disciples of the aristocratic families did not gain anything and almost all of them left. Only a small portion of the elites managed to comprehend something, but most of them only comprehended low-grade king-class swordsmanship. The steel-seeking forest is actually so difficult to comprehend? Oh my, just the outermost steels are already so difficult to comprehend. How difficult would it be to comprehend the inscriptionless sword steel in the depths? Those geniuses who had entered the steel-seeking forest for the first time were all amazed. After a day, less than 1/10 of the young elites remained in the steel-seeking forest. Even more people stayed in the surroundings to observe and see if there would be any monstrous geniuses. Father, let me do it. On the Han family's side, Han Ziqiang cupped her fists and said to Han Shan. Go ahead. Nephew Mubai has been teaching you during this period of time. I'm sure your results will be better than before, Han Shan said with a smile. Han Ziqiang raised her eyebrows at Han Xiaokui. Father, I'll do it too, Han Xiaokui said. Sigh, Xiaokui, just do your best. Han Shan sighed. Father, why do you have so little confidence in me? Han Xiaokui pouted. Han Shan told Han Ziqiang that her results might be better. But to Han Xiaokui, he told her to do her best. The difference in attitude was obvious. It's not that I don't believe you. You're weaker than Ziqiang, and, Han Shan glanced at Yi Guqin. Although he did not say it, his meaning was clear. It would be strange if he improved after choosing such a mortal as his master. I'll prove it to you. Han Xiaokui did not want to embarrass herself, nor did she want to embarrass Yi Guqin. Next, Han Ziqiang and Han Xiaokui walked towards the forest of steels. Han Lingxian also cast her gaze over. She wanted to know which of her 2 younger sisters would be better under the guidance of 2 different people. But the result was, Han Lingxian did not think there was any suspense. With Shenmubai's amazing sword mastery, she would benefit immensely from just a few pointers. It's the 2 flowers of the Han family. I wonder who will be better. Is there a need to compete? The 2 of them attracted the attention of more than 300,000 martial artists. Han Ziqiang and Han Xiaokui sat cross-legged in front of a stele at the periphery. However, not long after sitting down, Han Xiaokui's small face was immediately filled with surprise. She was a little stunned. Not far away, Han Ziqiang saw this and said teasingly, "My good sister, what's wrong? Can't you even comprehend the outermost steles? Looks like your big brother Duga didn't teach you anything." Han Shan's face also darkened slightly. No matter what, Han Xiaokui was still his third daughter. It would be embarrassing if her performance was worse than that of an ordinary disciple of an aristocratic family. Han Lingxian saw her sister's performance and frowned slightly. She looked at Yi Guqin with a questioning gaze. However, at this time, Shen Mubai pretended to sigh and said, "Sigh, Mubai originally wanted to teach Xiaokui well. Unfortunately, Xiaokui was bewitched by someone. Otherwise, her performance would not be like this." Shen Mubai's embellishment of the story made the Han family even more furious at Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin stood calmly and looked at Han Xiaokui with a smile. This, how can it be so simple? Han Xiaokui was surprised not because the steles were too difficult. But, it was too simple. It was as if a set of sword techniques had been broken down into countless details and displayed in front of her. Of course, this was not because the steles were easy to comprehend. It was because Han Xiaokui's understanding of sword techniques had improved by leaps and bounds under Yi Guqin's guidance. Soon, in less than a quarter of an hour, the stele in front of Han Xiaokui suddenly shook and emitted a white halo. At the same time, Han Xiaokui suddenly stood up and drew out her sword. Just like that, she displayed a set of king-level sword techniques smoothly. What's going on? Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at Han Xiaokui, who was performing sword techniques. Did she comprehend? Chapter 836. Everyone's eyes were glued to Han Xiaokui like magnets meeting iron. What was going on? Han Xiaokui had been sitting cross-legged in front of the stone tablet for only 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, Han Xiaokui stood up and began to practice the sword. Her movements were smooth and fluid, without the slightest hint of awkwardness. Han Xiaokui immediately comprehended the king-level sword principle engraved on the stone tablet to a higher level. Is this real? Or am I seeing things? Many of the spectating disciples from aristocratic families rubbed their eyes, thinking that they were seeing things. It had only been 15 minutes. They had spent an entire day trying to understand the sword technique, but they still could not find a way to comprehend it. Han Xiaokui had only used 15 minutes to comprehend it. What kind of talent was that? What kind of comprehension was that? Didn't they say that Han Xiaokui was the weakest among the three sisters? All the martial artists were dumbfounded and looked at the Han family in a daze. Han Shan's expression was also very interesting. Even he did not expect that his youngest daughter, whom he did not think highly of, would be so talented. The handsome face of Shen Mubai, who had originally wanted to see a joke, froze slightly. His eyes were also filled with disbelief. Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes shone with a strange light, and she suddenly looked at Yi Guqin. Although Yi Guqin did not have a trace of aura, Han Lingxian had a strange feeling. Did I misjudge him? Does he really have the ability to teach my younger sister? Han Lingxian thought to herself. Of course, Han Ziqiang could not accept it the most. No, this is impossible. It must be a coincidence. Han Ziqiang's expression was ugly. She did not resent Xiaokui, but she resented Yi Guqin, who was behind Xiaokui. She had been taught by Shen Mubai. How could she be weaker than Han Xiaokui? Many people reacted when they heard Han Ziqiang's words. Is it really a coincidence? I think so too. Maybe this sword technique is very compatible with Han Xiaokui's attribute, so she could comprehend it so quickly. Han Xiaokui's performance was too shocking. It was so shocking that it was somewhat unexpected, so many people thought that it was all a coincidence. You still don't believe me? After successfully comprehending a stone tablet, Han Xiaokui became even more confident in herself. She also cast a grateful gaze at Yiguchin. If it weren't for Yiguchin's guidance, she definitely wouldn't have been able to perform so amazingly. After that, Han Xiaokui didn't stop. She continued on until she reached the second stone stele and began to comprehend it. I don't believe it. I absolutely don't believe it. Third sister's talent is inferior to mine. How could she possibly surpass me under the guidance of that cripple? Han Ziqiang stared at Han Xiaokui's back. Her heart was in a mess. However, Han Xiaokui's performance shocked everyone once again. Half an hour later, the stone stele in front of Han Xiaokui began to glow with a faint yellow light again. Han Xiaokui stood up and attacked again. This time, it was a mid-tier king-level sword skill. Heavens, this is too fast. Everyone was shocked. The eyes of many aristocratic family disciples almost popped out of their sockets. Why did they feel that Han Xiaokui's talent wasn't inferior to Shinmubai and the other two prodigies? When did Han Xiaokui become so powerful? Prince Li Jingtian of the Li family's imperial family was surprised. In the Han family, the only one who was qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with him was Han Lingxian. However, Han Xiaokui's performance was beyond his expectations. I heard that the blacksmith is teaching her. But how is that possible? Han Xiaokui must have hidden her true talent. Princess Li Nianyao said from the side. She also didn't quite believe that a mortal with no martial arts cultivation could train Han Xiaokui to be so powerful. Could it be true? Han Shan's face was full of shock. If it was the first time, it could be a coincidence. What about this time? Even as her father, he did not dare to believe that his youngest daughter had such talent. Is Xiaokui hiding her true talent? Or is it because? Han Shan couldn't help but look at Yiguchin. However, no matter how he looked at it, Yiguchin didn't have the slightest bit of cultivation. How did such a mortal teach his daughter? How could this be? Although Shinmubai maintained his calm, his heart was also stirred. He looked at Han Ziqiang, his eyes darkening. At this moment, Han Ziqiang's heart was in a mess. She was pale, and her eyes were bloodshot. She had just said that Han Xiaokui was just a coincidence, but Han Xiaokui immediately understood the second stone tablet. Now Han Ziqiang knew that the so-called coincidence was just to comfort herself. No, it's impossible. That cripple couldn't have taught you so well. I won't be any weaker than you. Han Ziqiang's heart was in a mess. She stared at the stone tablet in front of her, wanting to understand it. However, the more anxious she was, the more she couldn't calm down. Under such circumstances, Han Ziqiang spent a full 4 hours just to understand the first stone tablet. This speed was much faster than the average disciple of an aristocratic family, but compared to Han Xiaokui's stunning performance, it wasn't worth mentioning. In fact, with her natural talent and Shinmubai's teaching, no matter how weak she was, she wouldn't have wasted so much time. It was all because her heart was in a mess. When Han Ziqiang finished understanding the first stone tablet, Han Xiaokui had already understood the fourth one. No, I can't lose. I can't embarrass Brother Mubai. Han Ziqiang bit her lip. If she lost to Han Xiaokui, wouldn't Yiguchin be slapping Shinmubai's face? Therefore, Han Ziqiang couldn't lose. Thinking of this, she took out a jade bottle and carefully poured out the powder inside. It's Brother Mubai's Path Understanding Leaf Powder. Some of the Han family's elites exclaimed. They didn't expect Han Ziqiang to keep some Path Understanding Leaf Powder and only use it now. Is that really Path Understanding Leaf Powder? I heard that Shinmubai gave it to her. TSK, with such a precious item, Han Ziqiang will surpass her. Seeing Han Ziqiang take out the Path Understanding Leaf Powder, the crowd was in an uproar. Shinmubai's expression became slightly better. With the help of this item, Han Ziqiang would surpass her. As expected, after using the Path Understanding Leaf Powder, a Taoist rhyme surrounded Han Ziqiang, resonating with the Taoist rhyme in the forest of stone tablets. Her speed of understanding the stone tablets also increased. In just 1 hour, she had already understood the second one. I still have a chance. I won't embarrass Brother Mubai. Han Ziqiang thought of this and heaved a sigh of relief. However, just as she was feeling relieved, she suddenly saw Han Xiaokui's sly and mischievous gaze. Hee, second sister, I'm sorry. Since you used an external item to help, then I can only use an external item. Ha! Xiaokui, what can you use? Can that useless person give you the path understanding leaf powder? Han Ziqiang wasn't worried at all. She laughed mockingly. Brother Dugu can't give me the path understanding leaf powder. Han Xiaokui nodded. I knew it. However, before Han Ziqiang could finish her mocking words, she saw Han Xiaokui take out a leaf with a mysterious pattern on it. With the appearance of this leaf, the Taoist rhyme in the entire forest of stone tablets seemed to ripple. Han Ziqiang's mocking smile completely froze. Chapter 837. What's that? Could it be a complete leaf of enlightenment? When Han Xiaokui took out the leaf of enlightenment, hundreds of thousands of cultivators stared at Han Xiaokui. When Han Ziqiang took out the leaf of enlightenment powder, it caused a lot of discussion. At this moment, seeing the leaf in Han Xiaokui's hand and the ripples of Taoist rhymes in the steel-seeking forest, who didn't know that it was a complete epiphany leaf? At this moment, many playful gazes fell on Han Ziqiang. They saw how Han Ziqiang treated the leaf of enlightenment powder as if it was a treasure and carefully used it. Then, Han Xiaokui took out the leaf of enlightenment, stuffed it into her mouth, and began to meditate. The contrast between the two was too great. No. Leaf of enlightenment, how could you have such a thing? Han Ziqiang was about to go crazy, her beautiful eyes red. She had only obtained a bottle of powder before, and she was showing it off. Now, Han Xiaokui took out a leaf of enlightenment. This made Han Ziqiang feel like she was a clown trying to please the crowd. Her gaze suddenly turned to Yi Guqin, as if she wanted to see through him. However, Yi Guqin's expression was still calm, and there was no change. You gave that leaf of enlightenment to Xiaokui. Han Ziqiang's beautiful eyes were spitting fire, and her chest was heaving up and down as she said this through gritted teeth. Everyone's eyes suddenly turned to Yi Guqin. At first, almost everyone was disdainful of Han Xiaokui's so-called master. However, Han Xiaokui's performance was like a slap to everyone's face. Even Han Shan looked at Yi Guqin, unable to hide the surprise on his face. I was lucky to get a few leaves. They're useless to me, so I gave them to Xiaokui. Yi Guqin said casually. He would not expose the fact that he had the tree of enlightenment. Many people nodded in agreement with this explanation. The tree of enlightenment was so precious that it would be unbelievable if he had the entire tree. However, this sentence also caused many people to be surprised by Yi Guqin. That was a precious leaf of enlightenment. Even if he had no use for it, he could exchange it for a considerable amount of wealth. However, Yi Guqin did not care at all and gave it to Han Xiaokui. What kind of courage was this? The faces of the Han clan elites who had been hooting earlier were now burning with anger. They had misunderstood that Yi Guqin was cheating Han Xiaokui, and he was scamming food and drink in the Han family. But would Yi Guqin, who had the leaf of enlightenment, cheat him of such a small amount of food? Of course, Shen Mubai was the most embarrassed. All he did was take out a bottle of powder, and they all thought that he was giving away some kind of great favor. As a result, Yi Guqin's casual behavior was a huge contrast to Shen Mubai's. Many of the Han clan disciples looked at Shen Mubai in a different light. Sensing the change, Shenzi's. You're just a cripple with no martial cultivation. You were lucky enough to get a few leaves. How dare you play me like this? He thought of the arrogance he had felt when he gave Yi Guqin the powder. Even Shen Mubai felt a sense of humiliation from being teased. Thinking of this, Shen Mubai could not help but feel cold towards Yi Guqin. Han Lingxian, who had not paid much attention to Yi Guqin, said to Yi Guqin, "Thank you for giving the leaf of enlightenment to Xiaokui. She saved my life. This is nothing." Yi Guqin waved his hand casually. This Han Lingshuan's character was clear about gratitude and grudges. She wasn't as unruly and harsh as Han Ziqiang. In the stone tablet forest, the two women were still meditating. Han Ziqiang had the help of the Leaf of Enlightenment. However, Han Xiaokuei had the Leaf of Enlightenment and Yi Guqin's guidance. Han Xiaokuei's speed would only be faster. Under everyone's stunned gaze, Han Xiaokuei comprehended more than 10 stone tablets in one go. On the other hand, Han Ziqiang had only comprehended 3 or 4 tablets. It was clear who was better and who was worse. I didn't expect that Han Ziqiang, who had been taught by Shenmubai, would be inferior to Han Xiaokuei. Whispers could be heard all around. Even Han Lingxian was surprised. Under Shenmubai's guidance, Ziqiang actually lost to Xiaokuei. Han Lingxian thought that with Shenmubai's monstrous sword skills, Han Ziqiang should have improved a lot with just some guidance. However, this was not the case. Perhaps Ziqiang's comprehension is limited. Han Lingxian shook her head slightly. As time passed, only a very small number of people remained in the steel-seeking forest to comprehend the mysteries. After continuously comprehending, even Han Xiaokuei felt a little dizzy. Although she had Yi Guqin's guidance, Han Xiaokuei's starting point was too low. To be able to reach this level was already amazing. At least in the Yun dynasty, Han Xiaokuei could be considered the top. As for Han Ziqiang, her face was pale. It was obvious that she had overdrawn her soul power and could not comprehend anymore. Come back, all of you. It's about time, Han Shan said. The stone tablets in the depths of the stone tablet forest had at least Supreme King level sword skills engraved on them. Even with Han Xiaokuei's current ability, she was still slightly inferior. Han Xiaokuei nodded slightly. She would not force herself. This result was already beyond Han Xiaokuei's expectations. Second elder sister, do you know who won and who lost? Did little Kuei blindly choose the wrong master, or is second elder sister too arrogant? Han Xiaokuei had been holding back her anger, and now she could finally let it out. Han Ziqiang's delicate body trembled. She was not angry at her sister, but at Yi Guqin. Who knows if this is the ability of that cripple, or you, Xiaokuei, who knows? Han Ziqiang bit her lips. She was unwilling to admit that it was Yi Guqin's credit. In her eyes, Yi Guqin did not provide any help other than the enlightenment leaf. That's right. No matter how I look at it, Dugu Wubai is just a mortal. Perhaps it's only because he gave the epiphany leaf to Han Xiaokuei that she was able to achieve such results. Many people were also speculating. After all, a person without any cultivation could teach Han Xiaokuei to be so powerful. No one would believe it. Looks like it's Xiaokuei's own hard work and a little luck, Shenmubai said calmly. He was obviously implying that Yi Guqin did not provide any help to Han Xiaokuei, and only gave her a few enlightenment leaves. That should be the case, Han Shan thought so too. After all, his attitude towards Yi Guqin was definitely not good. Yi Guqin was a hidden expert, and that was a slap to his face. You're twisting words and forcing logic. Han Xiaokuei clenched her fists. She did not expect that. Even so, they still did not believe Yi Guqin. Third sister, you're too naive. You have to know that strength is revered in this world. If that Dugu Wubai can really comprehend the imperial sword steel, then second sister, even if I kneel before him and apologize, so what? Han Ziqiang's expression finally recovered a little. So what if she lost to Han Xiaokuei? It still could not cover the fact that Yi Guqin was an ordinary person. Moreover, Han Ziqiang also knew that Yi Guqin needed the Great Sun Dragon Essence Fruit. But the Great Sun Dragon Essence Fruit could only be obtained by comprehending the most difficult imperial sword steel. So Han Ziqiang could not help but curl her lips into a mocking smile. She wanted to see if Yi Guqin had the guts to comprehend the imperial sword steel. Chapter 838. After Han Xiaokuei and Han Ziqiang left, there were not many disciples left in the entire steel-seeking forest. Not only were they not as smart as Han Xiaokuei and the others, but they also did not have the Tree of Enlightenment. It was extremely difficult for them to comprehend the steals. The true prodigies should be making a move soon. Many people looked at Shinmubai, Han Lingxian, and the others. In the past few days of comprehension, the three prodigies of the Yun dynasty did not make a move. Obviously, they were very calm and did not care about wasting a few days. It's about time. Lingxian, why don't we have a competition? Shinmubai took a step forward. He was tall and handsome, and there was a faint smile on his face. While he looked free and easy, he also gave people a feeling of unfathomable depth. Young Master Shen, you're too humble. If it was before, we could have a competition. But now, Lingxian knows that she is not as good as you. Han Lingxian looked at Shinmubai with a deep gaze. Based on the sword will fluctuations and sword marks left by Shinmubai at the place where she practiced her sword, Shinmubai's sword Dao had far surpassed her. That was why Han Lingxian said that. However, when these words were spoken, it caused the surrounding 300,000 plus spectators to reveal stunned expressions on their faces. What's going on? Han Lingxian actually admitted that she is not as good as Shinmubai. Han Lingxian is also very competitive, especially when it comes to sword Dao. How could she admit defeat? Everyone was in disbelief. Shinmubai, Han Lingxian, and Li Jingtian were the three prodigies. Their strength and cultivation levels were not very different, and they had always been equally famous. But now, Han Lingxian actually said that she was not as good as Shinmubai in public. Li Jingtian's expression changed slightly. Why would Han Lingxian say that? Li Jingtian muttered to himself. In fact, he also secretly admired Han Lingxian. He had been fighting with Shinmubai both openly and secretly. But now, Han Lingxian actually said such words, which was hard for Li Jingtian to accept. Then what's going on with Han Lingxian? Li Nianyao was also very surprised. Other than her brother Li Jingtian, only Han Lingxian could make Li Nianyao slightly admire her. After all, she was a hero among women. Han Lingshuan's attitude surprised Li Nianyao. Han Lingxian would not speak without thinking. I'm afraid that Shinmubai truly has some sort of method to subdue her. At this point, Li Jingtian sighed. My son, the two of you should go as well. Remember, no matter what, you must surpass Shinmubai. You must not let him marry the Han clan's prideful daughter. Cloud Emperor secretly transmitted his voice to Yifutian. If these two families joined forces, the Li family of the imperial family would have a hard time, and their status would be threatened. Yes, Li Jingtian and Li Nianyao also stepped forward. Looks like all the true geniuses are about to make their moves. Seeing that Li Jingtian, Li Nianyao, Shinmubai, and Han Lingxian had stepped forward, the slightly silent atmosphere in the entire place once again surged. After all, the hope of comprehending the imperial sword steel this time rested on these few people. Lingxian, and nephew Shen, don't disappoint your uncle. Han Shan's expression also became slightly nervous. After all, this concerned whether the Han clan would be able to obtain the imperial sword skill. It would be a lie to say that he was not nervous. Han Shan had waited too long for this imperial sword skill. He had even taken out a sacred medicine like the Great Sun Dragon Vitality Fruit and was even willing to marry off one of his daughters. Uncle, don't worry. Shinmubai smiled confidently. Han Shan also smiled and placed all his hopes on Han Lingxian and Shinmubai. Just as these few people were about to step into the steel forest. However, there was a figure who calmly walked up. Everyone's gaze focused. At this point, almost no other disciples from the other families had entered. It was completely a stage for Shinmubai and the other geniuses. However, at this time, another person walked out and attracted everyone's attention. Isn't that the blacksmith? Many people looked at Yiguchin, especially when they saw the word iron on his clothes. Their expressions were a little strange. This person is Dugu Wubai. He's Han Xiaokui's master. Why did he step forward? Does he also want to comprehend the steel? Han Xiaokui's performance was indeed shocking, but it has nothing to do with Duge Wubai, except for the enlightenment leaf. Yi Guqin's appearance caused a commotion. In particular, he had no aura of cultivation, which made people look at him strangely. An interesting person has appeared. Cloud Emperor glanced at Yi Guqin and shook his head slightly. Ha, Brother Han, are you kidding? Even your blacksmith is qualified to enter the steel forest. Master Shenlai laughed, thinking that this was too ridiculous. Come back. This is not the place for you to cause trouble. Han Shan's face darkened slightly, and he was a little unhappy. At this juncture, Yi Guqin, a cripple, had stepped out to cause trouble. What else could it be? Ha, Duge Wubai, I didn't expect you to be so overconfident. Han Ziqiang covered her mouth and laughed heartily. Even the Han family members were shaking their heads. Previously, Yi Guqin had selflessly given the enlightenment leaf to Han Xiaokui, and they were a little ashamed. However, now that Yi Guqin had stepped out to cause trouble, their expressions did not look too good. All of you, shut up. Only my master has the highest chance of comprehending the imperial sword steel. Suddenly, Han Xiaokui shouted with all her might. Her crisp voice resounded in all directions. The crowd fell silent, and then roared with laughter. Stop fooling around. Han Shan was a little embarrassed. His daughter had embarrassed him so much. It's true. Han Xiaokui clenched her fists, feeling indignant for Yi Guqin. However, not a single person believed her words. After all, countless powerful martial artists and geniuses had tried to comprehend the imperial sword steel, but they had not succeeded. How could a mortal with no cultivation succeed? Who would believe that? In the face of the laughter of hundreds of thousands of people, Yi Guqin stood quietly with a deep look in his eyes. Han Lingxian looked at Yi Guqin with a hint of surprise in her beautiful eyes. Not to mention other things, just his temperament alone was enough to make Han Lingxian raise her eyebrows. At this moment, a voice was heard. Ha, why do you have to do this, uncle? So what if you give him a chance? At least he can see his own status clearly and stop his wishful thinking. The person who spoke was none other than Shen Mubai. At this moment, his actions were calm, and his words were carefree. He looked extremely magnanimous. Tisk, tsk. As expected of young Master Mubai. Who can compare to his magnanimity? That's right. Only young Master Mubai would be willing to comprehend the steel with a mortal. If it were any other geniuses, they would probably be dismissive. Shen Mubai's words immediately attracted a wave of cheers and praises. As expected of young Master Mubai. The difference between people is really huge. Han Ziqiang's beautiful eyes were filled with admiration. She looked at Yi Guqin with extreme disgust. This. All right. Since my nephew has spoken up for you, you can go in. But remember, you must not disturb them. If you dare to cause trouble, your life will be in danger. Han Shan warned Yi Guqin in a deep voice. Ha! Yi Guqin smiled faintly and did not say anything. Shen Mubai's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. Since you embarrassed me, I will make you lose face in front of hundreds of thousands of people. Chapter 839. Within the mountain range, the Seeking Steel Forest was filled with Taoist connotation. Shen Mubai, Han Lingxian, Li Jingtian, Li Nianyao, and Yi Guqin, a total of 5 people, were about to enter. Apart from Yi Guqin, the other 4 were all geniuses, like the geniuses of the sword. Only Yi Guqin, who was wearing a blacksmith's linen robe, did not emit any aura. Standing together with the other 4, it was extremely out of place. Many people were trying to hold back their laughter, waiting to see Yi Guqin make a fool of himself. Only Han Xiaokui clenched her fists with a tense expression. She was holding back her anger, hoping that Yi Guqin would show his true talent and give everyone a slap in the face. Let's enter. Shen Mubai and Han Lingxian did not hesitate and stepped into the forest. Yi Guqin stepped into the Seeking Steel Forest at almost the same time. As soon as he stepped into the forest, Yi Guqin could feel the dense sword-based Taoist rhyme. This place was indeed a land of treasures. Yi Guqin even felt that the Taoist rhyme here was helpful to his comprehension of the various sword intents. Even the sword intent of all creation that he had just begun to comprehend could be cultivated with the help of the environment here. Just as Yi Guqin was secretly comprehending the Taoist rhyme with his sword intent, the entire steel-seeking forest suddenly began to shake. The stone steels engraved with swordsmanship suddenly began to tremble. This sudden scene caused the faces of all the spectators to be filled with shock. They had no idea what was going on. Even Han Shan's expression froze for a moment. Then, an uncontrollable look of joy appeared on his face. Is this the resonance of the stone steels? This is great, this is great. Han Shan was so excited that his entire body was trembling, but he did not know what was going on. A moment later, the depths of the seeking steel forest shook even more violently. A ray of golden light surged into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds. Such an unforeseen event caused everyone to cry out in shock. Heavens, the Imperial Sword steel is resonating as well. This is great. Ha, the heavens are protecting my Han family. Han Shan threw his head back and laughed, unable to contain his joy. His entire body was trembling. Dare I ask Brother Han, what exactly is going on? Patriarch Xinlai asked. The Cloud Emperor also cast an inquiring look at him. Everyone, you might not know this, but it's extremely difficult to comprehend the Imperial Sword steel. However, our Han family has left behind records that if the steel resonates one day, it means that the person who enters will be qualified to obtain the Imperial Sword technique on the Imperial Sword steel. Han Shan was in a good mood as he explained. So that's the case. The 300,000 spectators also heard Han Shan's words. Immediately, numerous astonished and shocked gazes gathered on Shen Mubai and Han Lingxian. That was because they were the ones who had entered together. As for Yi Guqin, he was quite a distance away from Shen Mubai and the others, and in addition to their impression of him. Therefore, no one associated the resonance of the steel with Yi Guqin. Who exactly resonated with the steel? Was it Shen Mubai or Han Lingxian? Everyone's gaze shifted back and forth between the two of them. Even Shen Mubai and Han Lingxian were surprised by the scene before them. However, Han Lingshuan's lips curled into a bitter smile. Han Lingxian knew her own capabilities. She might have a chance to comprehend the Imperial Sword steel, but she definitely could not resonate with the steel. In addition, she had misunderstood Shen Mubai and thought that he was the one who had left the sword mark at the sword practice ground. Therefore, Han Lingxian took half a step back and said, "Young Master Shen, I know my own capabilities. It seems that you are the only one who knows." As soon as she said that, everyone gasped and looked at Shen Mubai in shock. It was indeed him. How is this possible? Is it really Shen Mubai? Li Jingtian clenched his fists and looked extremely unwilling. However, no matter how unwilling he was, there was nothing he could do in the face of the ironclad reality. "Brother, we have to work harder. Even if Shen Mubai can resonate with the steel, he might not be able to comprehend the Imperial Sword steel," Li Nianyao said firmly. Li Nianyao said harshly, but even she could hear the guilt in her voice. Sigh. Cloud Emperor sighed. The results seemed to be clear. "Ha, Brother Han, it seems that the heavens want us to become in-laws." Master Xinlai laughed heartily. It was as if he could already see his son comprehending the Imperial Sword skill. Even Shen Mubai himself was overjoyed. "Ha, the great Sun Dragon Origin Fruit and Han Lingxian are all mine." Shen Mubai was ecstatic, but he looked calm and composed on the surface. "Third sister, do you see that? The matter is right before your eyes. Only big brother Mubai is able to comprehend the Imperial Sword tablet. That Dugu Wubai." Ha! Han Ziqiang couldn't help but ridicule when she saw this. Brother Dugu also went in just now. Han Xiaokui's face was slightly pale, but she still said confidently. "Oh, so it was your brother Dugu who caused the steel to resonate?" Han Ziqiang looked playful. The rest of the Han family disciples also had mocking looks on their faces. Han Xiaokui pouted and stared at Yi Guqin. There's actually such a change. When Yi Guqin saw the change in the steel-seeking forest, he was slightly surprised. He did not expect the steel-seeking forest to resonate with his sword essence. Yi Guqin did not care about the discussions outside. He continued to stand in the same spot and comprehend the doctrine rhyme. Li Jingtian and Li Nianyao also stepped into the steel-seeking forest. Together with Shen Mubai and Han Lingxian, they began to comprehend the steel. They did not choose to comprehend the imperial sword steel directly. Instead, they adapted step by step from the outside to the inside, resonating with the doctrine rhyme. On the other hand, Yi Guqin just stood in the same spot with his eyes closed. He realized that the sword essence in his body had also started to transform because of the doctrine rhyme. The edgeless sword essence was almost transforming into sword Dao. The five elements sword essence was not far from sword Dao. As for the hard and soft sword essence that Yi Guqin had comprehended earlier, it had already transformed into sword Dao. However, Yi Guqin had never used it. The Azura sword Dao, needless to say, was more stable. What made Yi Guqin the happiest was that his understanding of the sword essence of all creation was slowly increasing. This steel-seeking forest is indeed a blessed land. Yi Guqin exclaimed in his heart. Just then, Yi Guqin heard Su Qingyu's words in his heart. The imperial sword steel in the depths has a thicker doctrine rhyme. If you can comprehend the imperial sword techniques on it, it will be helpful for your understanding of the various sword essences. Alright, I'll stay here and comprehend the doctrine rhyme first. Then, I'll go and comprehend the imperial sword steel. Yi Guqin thought to himself. For Yi Guqin, who had the 10,000 gods tribulation, deities weep, and the sword sect's unique skills, ordinary king-level sword techniques could no longer pique his interest. Only the imperial sword techniques on the imperial sword steel had value for Yi Guqin to cultivate. Hence, he did not start from the imperial sword steel like the other four people. However, Yi Guqin's performance caused another round of criticism. What is Dugu Wubai doing? Why is he standing in the same spot like a fool? Why isn't he comprehending the steel? Is he trying to comprehend the imperial sword steel directly? Ha! Seeing this, Han Shan shook his head and said, what an unnecessary move. Xiao Kuei, I'm waiting to kneel down and apologize to him, Han Ziqiang mocked. Big brother Dugu, what are you doing? Han Xiaokuei bit her lips and was worried for Yi Guqin. Chapter 840. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. In these 10 days, Shen Mubai and the other three had comprehended the steels one by one. It had to be said that the three great prodigies of the Chu Yun dynasty had some foundation. Li Nianyao was slightly weaker, but not by much. TSK, young master Shen Mubai is really powerful. Han Lingxian is not bad either. Prince Li Jingtian is still as steady as ever. The spectators were whispering to each other. Of course, they also knew that comprehending the king-level swordsmanship steels was just an appetizer. The most important thing was the imperial sword steel. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but look at another figure. They could not hide the mockery in their eyes. Yi Guqin had been sitting quietly in the steel forest for more than 10 days. While Shen Mubai and the others were comprehending the steels, Yi Guqin sat quietly in the same spot as if he was comprehending something with his eyes closed. However, the crowd did not think so. How could he be comprehending something? What can a person with no cultivation level comprehend? That's right. If it were me, even if there was no hope of comprehending the steels, I would at least try and not just sit there and do nothing. Many warriors despised Yi Guqin's performance. In the beginning, he was the one who requested to enter the steel forest. However, after entering, he did not do anything and did not even dare to try. It was no wonder that the spectators despised Yi Guqin. Xiaokui, do you still have hope for that cripple? Han Ziqiang's expression was very calm as she crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked relaxed. Han Xiaokui looked stubborn as she stared at Yi Guqin. She absolutely did not believe that the person who could make her perform so amazingly just by casually giving her pointers would be so cowardly. Look, Shinmubai and the others are close to the Imperial Sword Steel. At this moment, the crowd exclaimed. Everyone's gaze shifted away from Yiguchin and landed on Shinmubai and the others in the depths of the steel forest. After so many days of comprehension, Shinmubai's group of 4 had finally reached the depths of the Imperial Sword Tablet. This is the Imperial Sword Steel. It was Lin Yanyao's first time seeing the Imperial Sword Tablet. The Imperial Sword Steel was 30 meters tall, and it stood out among the other steels. Unlike the other stone steels, there was not a single word on the Imperial Sword Steel, nor were there any markings or symbols. This was also the reason why the Imperial Sword Steel was so hard to comprehend. Moreover, this had nothing to do with one's cultivation, because even with Venerable Han Shan's strength, he was unable to comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel. Who's first? Shinmubai and the other 3 looked at each other. Shinmubai himself had a profound and calm look on his face. Experts were always the last to appear, and if they succeeded in comprehending the Imperial Sword Steel at the end, the shock they would bring would be the greatest, so Shinmubai didn't try to be the first. I'll go first. Lin Yanyao's figure flashed as she sat cross-legged in front of the royal sword tablet. Shinmubai, Li Jingtian, and Han Lingxian watched from the side. Although Lin Yanyao's talent and strength were not as good as theirs, she was still the best after them. Outside the steel forest, more than 300,000 martial artists were also watching. The Cloud Emperor was also watching. Han Shan looked indifferent. Although Lin Yanyao's talent was not bad, the possibility of her comprehending it was very low. As expected, after a day, Lin Yanyao's face was slightly pale. The Imperial Sword Steel in front of her did not react at all. As expected, it's not possible. Lin Yanyao's mouth revealed a touch of bitterness. Could it be that only Shinmubai, who resonated with the Imperial Sword Steel, could truly comprehend it? Thinking of this, Lin Yanyao couldn't help but look at Shinmubai. Shinmubai was calm and composed as he smiled at Lin Yanyao. Lin Yanyao snorted coldly, got up and turned her head away. The Imperial family and the Shin family had always been on bad terms, not to mention that Shinmubai was her brother's love rival. Let Lingxian try next. Han Lingxian walked out with light steps, her face calm and composed. When Shinmubai and Li Jingtian saw this, a touch of admiration flashed in their eyes. Especially the slim waist outlined by the sapphire blue dress, which made people want to hug her. As long as they comprehended the Imperial Sword Steel, they would be able to obtain such a beauty. A wisp of determination appeared in their eyes. Han Lingxian sat cross-legged in front of the Imperial Sword Steel and began to comprehend it. At the same time, she released her sword intent in an attempt to resonate with the Imperial Sword Steel. Around Han Lingxian, plants were flourishing and flowers bloomed. Her sword intent was the wood sword intent of the 5 elements sword intent, which represented vitality and rejuvenation. That's Han Lingxuan's wood sword intent. As expected, if one wants to comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel, at the very least, one has to be a prodigy with sword intent. If one doesn't even have sword intent, what else can they dream of? Some people said. At the same time, they glanced at Yiguchin, who was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. How could someone who didn't even have sword intent be qualified to comprehend it? However, they didn't know that Yiguchin's sword Dao had already reached the level where he could freely withdraw and release sword intent. If he didn't take the initiative to reveal it, no one would be able to sense it. As time passed, the Imperial Sword Steel started to tremble slightly, and strands of light flowed out from the steel. Is Lingxian going to succeed? Han Shan couldn't help but clench his fists. If his daughter could comprehend it, it would be great. He wouldn't even have to give out the sacred elixir. On the other hand, Shinmubai's eyes sank. If Han Lingxian really comprehended it, then his plan would be ruined. Unfortunately, after the Imperial Sword Steel trembled for a while, it fell silent. Han Lingxuan's delicate body trembled slightly, and her face turned pale. I still didn't succeed. Han Lingxian bit her red lips. She was unwilling to give up. When the surrounding people saw this, they sighed slightly. It wasn't out of their expectations. Looks like I'll have to rely on the two of you. Han Lingxian looked at Shen Mubai and Li Jingtian. More accurately, she was looking at Shen Mubai. She felt that Shen Mubai's sword Dao was much higher than hers, and he had caused the imperial sword steel to resonate with him. Li Jingtian's face stiffened, but he still stood out. His Highness is going to make a move. The surrounding people stared at him. The Cloud Emperor's heart tightened. Brother, you can do it. Li Nianyao shouted. Li Jingtian took a deep breath and sat cross-legged in front of the imperial sword steel to comprehend it. Rumble, the imperial sword steel began to tremble. Vaguely, a faint silver sword radiance appeared on the imperial sword steel. Is the prince going to succeed? This strange change attracted the attention of everyone. Brother, are you going to comprehend it? Li Nianyao's pretty face lit up. Han Lingxian also had a strange look in her eyes as she watched. Shen Mubai's hand tightened slightly. Li Jingtian gritted his teeth and tried his best to comprehend it. His mind was running wildly, and he was exhausted. But finally, there was a puff. Li Jingtian's body trembled, and he spat out a small mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. The faint sword mark on the imperial sword steel immediately disappeared. Li Jingtian had failed to comprehend it. Chapter 841. Looking at the silent imperial sword steel and Li Jingtian, who was spitting out blood. Countless martial artists sighed. They did not expect that after Han Lingxian, Li Jingtian also failed to comprehend the imperial sword steel. Out of the three geniuses of the Chuyun dynasty, two had failed, and only Shen Mubai was left. I failed. Li Jingtian's face was ashen. Li Nianyao's face was also pale. Even her brother, who she admired the most, had failed. Sigh. Cloud Emperor sighed. He could only hope that Shen Mubai could not comprehend it successfully. Ha! Seeing Li Jingtian's miserable state, Shen Mubai laughed. He had expected this. Young Master Shen, please do it, Han Lingxian said sincerely. She was about to go to the Sword Dynasty and needed an imperial sword technique. Nephew Shen, please do it. We are counting on you. Han Shan also cupped his hands solemnly. An imperial sword technique was too important to the Han family. The only person who could comprehend it was Shen Mubai, who had resonated with the imperial sword steel. Mubai, why don't you make your move? Shen Lai chuckled. Alright, let me give it a try. Shen Mubai flicked his sleeves, looking relaxed. He sat cross-legged in front of the imperial sword steel and released his sword essence to comprehend it. What Shen Mubai had comprehended was the sword essence of rain. The entire steel-seeking forest seemed to have started to drizzle, but every drop of rain contained a trace of sword essence. Young Master Shen is indeed amazing. When the surrounding 300,000 martial artists saw this, their eyes were filled with admiration. It seems that I was biased against young Master Shen. Han Lingxian sighed and felt guilty. On the other side, Li Jingtian smiled sadly. He was not as good as Shen Mubai. Xiao Kuei, open your eyes and see how young Master Shen Mubai comprehended the imperial sword steel, Han Ziqiong said, staring at Shen Mubai. Humph. Han Xiao Kuei was not convinced. As time passed, the imperial sword steel began to tremble. A silver sword mark gradually appeared on the wordless steel. Furthermore, the traces were even clearer than Li Jingtian's. I'm about to succeed. As expected, only those who can resonate with the imperial sword steel can comprehend it. An uproar arose in the entire arena when they saw the sword scar that was gradually forming. Obviously, they thought that Shen Mubai was about to succeed. No, it hasn't fully manifested yet. It seems to be incomplete. But it doesn't matter. Nephew Shen should have hope, Han Shan muttered to himself. At this moment, some other cultivators also noticed it. That silver sword mark was not a complete sword move, but an incomplete one. If he wanted to obtain this royal-level sword art, he would need to fully comprehend it. However, as time passed, only a single mark remained on the imperial sword steel. Shinmubai's expression was calm, but his heart began to feel uneasy. He had always been confident in himself and even believed that he had resonated with the imperial sword steel. But now, it was difficult for him to comprehend it in depth. However, Han Shan and the others did not think so. "Nephew Shen, don't hide it anymore. Show your true strength," Han Shan said. "That's right. Mubai, don't hide it anymore. Just comprehend it directly," Shenlai said. "Brother Mubai, what are you waiting for? Just comprehend it directly." Han Ziqiang was extremely confident in Shin Mubai. Even Han Lingxian, who was at the side, said, "Young Master Shen, Lingxian knows that your true sword Dao is very profound. It is far from being as shallow as it is now. So, please treat it seriously." Ah! Shin Mubai felt as if 10,000 alpacas were galloping through his heart. At this moment, he had already used all his strength. How could he have any strength left? Even maintaining the current situation took Shin Mubai all his mental and physical strength. Cold sweat flowed down his forehead, and his consciousness was beginning to dry up. Shin Mubai's abnormality was also noticed by the crowd. "Why do I feel that young Master Shin seems to have used all his strength? Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's hiding it," many cultivators were puzzled. Previously, they thought that Shin Mubai would be able to comprehend the imperial sword tablet very quickly after resonating with it. But now, after such a long time, there was still only an incomplete sword mark on the imperial sword tablet. It shouldn't be. Han Lingxian was also puzzled as she looked at Shin Mubai. "No, I can't go on like this. Since I resonated with the imperial sword tablet, I must comprehend it." Shin Mubai revealed a resolute expression. He suddenly took out a pill and swallowed it. However, those with sharp eyes saw the medicinal pill. "That's the Enlightenment Soul Pill. After consuming it, it will help you comprehend the Tao. However, it will burn your soul power and cause great damage to your consciousness," an alchemist suddenly exclaimed. The moment he said that, the crowd was shocked. Everyone was in disbelief. Since Shin Mubai resonated with the imperial sword tablet, why did he need the help of the Enlightenment Soul Pill? What is going on? Han Shan was also confused. He had placed all his hopes on Shin Mubai. He thought that he would be able to comprehend it easily. In the end, he was reduced to needing to consume a special pill. "Young Master Shen, you..." Han Lingxian was also slightly surprised. The side effects of the Enlightenment Soul Pill were very big, so they did not choose to consume it. Shin Mubai's eyes were filled with madness at this moment. He did not care about the gazes of others. His only obsession was to comprehend the imperial sword tablet. After comprehending the imperial sword tablet, the sacred medicine and Han Lingxian are all mine. Paying this price is nothing. Shin Mubai roared in his heart. After consuming the Enlightenment Soul Pill, his comprehension ability increased explosively again. The imperial sword tablet trembled even more violently. Then, a blue sword mark appeared on the surface of the tablet. Is he going to succeed? The hundreds of thousands of spectating martial artists all watched nervously. The corners of Shin Mubai's mouth started to bleed. His eyes were bloodshot. That blue sword mark slowly became clear. Blood started to seep out of Shin Mubai's 7 orifices, causing his handsome face to be as ferocious as an evil spirit. Everyone was frightened. They felt that Shin Mubai's current appearance was too different from his usual handsome appearance. The doubts in Han Lingshuan's heart became even stronger. She vaguely felt that she seemed to have misunderstood something. Right at this moment, there was a thud. Shin Mubai felt a sharp pain in his head. He suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. At this moment, blood seeped out of his 7 orifices. He collapsed on the ground, looking as miserable as possible. There was no longer the confidence and mystery from before. This failed. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was surprised. Why is it like this? Shinmubai clearly resonated with it. Why? Han Shan stood stiffly on the spot, his body trembling. He was so angry that he almost fainted. To think that he had great hopes for Shinmubai, and even called him a virtuous nephew. In the end, he still failed. Big brother Mubai, how could? Han Ziqiang's face was also pale. She shook her head in disbelief, as if she was unable to accept this fact. Just as the entire crowd was shocked by Shinmubai's failure, a voice suddenly rang out. Rumble, the imperial sword tablet that had just quieted down actually erupted with an unprecedented light. A golden pillar of light shot into the sky. Ha, I succeeded, I succeeded. Shinmubai, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly let out a loud laugh. He was unable to contain his joy. Shinmubai succeeded. This unforeseen event also surprised everyone once again. However, at this moment, a faint voice caused the entire place to fall into a deathly silence. Excuse me. Chapter 842. The change in the imperial sword tablet caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Could it be that Shinmubai had used all his strength to completely comprehend the imperial sword tablet? But as the faint voice sounded out, the entire place fell into a deathly silence. Everyone's gaze turned towards the youth who was walking towards the imperial sword tablet. He was wearing an extremely simple linen robe, and there was even a large Tai character on it. If it was before, it would definitely cause everyone to burst into laughter. But now, no one could laugh. Could it be? Many people were shocked as they looked towards the linen-robed youth. It was Yi Guqin. I didn't expect there to be an unexpected gain. At this moment, Yi Guqin had a faint smile on his face. He had been sitting cross-legged on the spot for more than 10 days. Naturally, he wasn't doing nothing. On one hand, he was sensing the Tao here. On the other hand, he was transforming his sword intent. Finally, after so many days of comprehension, Yi Guqin's edgeless sword intent had finally completely transformed into edgeless sword Tao. After the earliest hard and soft sword Tao and the Azura sword Tao, Yi Guqin had once again comprehended the third sword Tao. His strength had once again increased. And with Yi Guqin's talent, comprehending the imperial sword tablet wasn't too difficult. So after he comprehended the sword Tao, he directly came to the imperial sword tablet. And the imperial sword tablet had already resonated with Yi Guqin, which was why there was such a change at this moment. Aren't you going to move aside? Looking at Shinmubai, who was standing in front of him with a pale face and bleeding from his 7 orifices, Yi Guqin frowned slightly. No, impossible. How could it be you? How could it be you? There must be something wrong. Shinmubai shook his head. What calmness! What carefreeness! It was all gone. At this moment, he was muttering to himself like a madman, his face filled with disbelief. His expression couldn't be blamed. There were more than 300,000 people present. Other than Han Xiaokui, everyone had unprecedented shock on their faces. What's going on? Wasn't it Shinmubai who caused the stone tablet to resonate? Could it be that Dugu Wubai triggered the resonance? Right, it seems like he also entered the steel-seeking forest at the same time. It's just that we didn't notice. At this moment, many people recalled that Yi Guqin had also entered at the same time. However, they subconsciously excluded Yi Guqin from the list. However, this scene was like a slap to their faces. How could this be? Impossible. I don't believe it. That cripple hasn't comprehended the imperial sword steel. I don't believe it. Han Ziqiang shook her head absent-mindedly. Shinmubai, whom she admired the most, was in such a sorry state. Instead, it was Yi Guqin, whom she despised, who was able to resonate with the stone tablet. Han Ziqiang couldn't accept this, and she shrieked. Was it really him who caused the stone tablet to resonate? But even if that's the case, can a person without any cultivation really comprehend the imperial sword tablet? Although there was shock on Han Shan's face, there were more questions than shock. Many people calmed down and thought of the same thing. Even if Yiguchin had caused the stone tablet to resonate with him, it didn't mean that he could comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. Yes, that's right. How could the Imperial Sword Tablet be so easy to comprehend? Shinmubai gritted his teeth, stood up and retreated, and stared at Yiguchin. He didn't believe it. Even a genius like him couldn't comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. How could a mere mortal like Yiguchin comprehend it? Facing the questioning gazes, Yiguchin didn't care at all. He calmly stood in front of the Imperial Sword Tablet with his hands behind his back. Although he was wearing a blacksmith's robe, his calm and indifferent aura made him seem like a peerless swordsman. Yiguchin slowly closed his eyes, and an obscure sword intent rippled out from his body. Is this sword intent ripple? Many people were confused. Why does it feel like it hasn't formed yet? Lin Yinyao was confused. She also didn't think that Yiguchin could comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. Even her royal brother and Shinmubai had failed. How could a mere mortal without any cultivation be able to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet? But the ripple on Yiguchin's body did indeed make Lin Yinyao confused. But when Han Lingxian felt the sword intent that hadn't formed yet, her eyes were filled with unprecedented shock. Han Lingxian couldn't be more familiar with this sword intent. It was exactly the same as the remnant sword intent ripple in the sword practice ground. So it's him. Han Lingxian was also in disbelief. She covered her red lips with her hand. She couldn't have imagined it no matter how hard she thought about it. The person who left behind the sword intent ripple, the person who left the sword mark, the person who left behind the words to remind her. It was actually Dugu Wubai in front of her. Thinking of this, Han Lingxian felt that it was unreal. Because even she had almost ignored Yiguchin's existence and didn't pay attention to him. But now, this young man who had been ridiculed, mocked, and ignored by everyone had become the center of the storm. As expected, there is an extremely thick Taoist rhyme in this Imperial Sword Tablet, and it also contains a powerful Imperial Sword technique. Yiguchin had a realization in his heart. He had the sword demon talent, the heart illumination of the sword, and the ancient tree of enlightenment in his dantian. This allowed him to sense things that others couldn't. In the eyes of others, the Imperial Sword Tablet was just a wordless tablet. But to Yiguchin, it was filled with extremely thick Taoist rhyme. He could vaguely see the 3 sword marks on the tablet. One was silver, one was blue, and one was gold. Yiguchin began to comprehend. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. The atmosphere of the crowd turned from astonishment to doubt. Shinmubai also recovered from his injuries and wiped the blood off his face. At this moment, he looked at Yiguchin with a cold smile. A mortal will always be a mortal. Can you really comprehend it? Phew. Fortunately, it seems like he was just bluffing. Han Ziqiang patted her ample chest and heaved a sigh of relief. If Yiguchin really comprehended the Imperial Sword Tablet, wouldn't she really have to kneel in front of him and apologize? Yiguchin completely ignored the voices around him. It's about time. Yiguchin slowly opened his eyes. Even with Yiguchin's talent, it would take him a day to comprehend the Imperial Sword technique. Of course, if it were anyone else, it would be useless no matter how much time they spent. If you can't do it, please step out. Shinmubai shouted coldly. Even Brother Huang and the others failed. It seems like this person has no hope. Lin Yinyao shook her head lightly. Sigh. I actually imagined that this person could comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. How foolish, Han Shan shook his head, thinking that his thoughts were laughable. Then, he shouted loudly, the forest of stone tablets is about to close. If you can't do it, please step out. The hundreds of thousands of martial artists around also shook their heads. It seemed like they had come for nothing again. Yiguchin's expression was calm as he turned to Han Lingxian. Can you lend me a sword? Everyone was stunned and looked at Yiguchin in confusion. Han Lingxian also looked at Yi Guqin in surprise. In fact, Yi Guqin did not do anything. She also doubted if her judgment was correct. At that moment, Han Lingxian did not hesitate and handed her sword to Yi Guqin. "What are you doing?" Shen Mubai bellowed. He did not expect Yi Guqin to take the opportunity to strike up a conversation with Han Lingxian. Yi Guqin did not mind. His Xianming heavy sword was already damaged, and the God Eater could not be used in public. Moreover, he could not activate it, so he could only borrow someone else's sword. "I'm borrowing the sword to comprehend the sword." After Yi Guqin finished speaking, he turned his wrist, and the sword vibrated and swept out horizontally. Although there was no fluctuation of true qi, the sound of the sword vibrating instantly reverberated between heaven and earth. Swoosh! 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 3 snow-white rays of sword light blasted onto the imperial sword steel. Just when everyone was stunned by Yi Guqin's action, something happened. 3 rays of sword light appeared on the tablet. Then, they shot out violently. 1 sword to kill the sun. 1 sword to kill the moon. 1 sword to break the stars. Yi Guqin swung his sword 3 times. The imperial sword skill had appeared. Chapter 843. Rumble. The entire mountain range was trembling, and the earth was shaking. It was as if the stars, sun, and moon were shaking. All the stone tablets in the stone tablet forest were emitting light at the same time. The imperial sword tablet was emitting an unprecedented light, as if it had been waiting for a long time, and the fated person had finally appeared. Endless light spread throughout the stone tablet forest. It was reflected on the dumbfounded faces of the crowd. The 300,000 cultivators all took a deep breath, and their minds were shaken like never before. It was as if a thunderbolt had struck their minds. The stone tablet forest was a famous place of opportunity even in the entire Cloud dynasty. However, the difficulty of comprehending it was comparable to its reputation. It could be said that such a strange phenomenon had never happened in the stone tablet forest since ancient times. No one had been able to comprehend the imperial sword tablet. However, today, they had witnessed a miracle. Moreover, the person who had created this miracle was not one of the 3 great prodigies, but an ordinary person who did not even have a ripple of true energy. This was the most shocking part of it all. A myriad of gazes descended onto Yi Guqin in unison. At this moment, Yi Guqin's gaze was extremely calm, and the sword in his hand was pointed at the ground. Although the 3 swords he had swung just now did not have any ripple of true energy. However, any swordsman with a bit of insight would be able to tell. That kind of natural way of attacking was definitely the momentum that only a sword Dao Grandmaster could have. Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes were brighter than ever, and she looked at Yi Guqin as if she had discovered a treasure. Now, Han Lingxian was almost certain that the person who had left the sword mark at the place where she had practiced was Yi Guqin. Impossible. Shen Mubai's face was pale, and his breathing was rapid as he looked at the imperial sword tablet in disbelief. The 3 sword gleams on the surface of the monument almost blinded his eyes. Li Jingtian was also extremely shocked, and he could not hide his astonishment. Li Nianyao's pretty face was even more dazed, and she was completely lost. Of course, the most shocked and incredulous person was definitely Han Ziqiang. She did not dare to believe that what she was seeing was real, and she thought that she was dreaming. But that iron-like fact was like a vicious slap to her face. "Second sister, are you still unwilling to admit that big brother Dugu is outstanding?" Han Xiaokui, on the other hand, puffed out her chest with a proud expression on her face. While everyone else was doubting and despising Yi Guqin, she was the only one who firmly believed that Yi Guqin was no ordinary person. The stories in the novels are indeed true. Han Xiaokui thought happily in her heart. She had really picked up a peerless genius on the side of the road. He hasn't completely obtained the royal level sword art. Han Ziqiang said forcefully, but even she could hear the trembling in her voice. Of course, the one with the most complicated feelings was Han Shan. On one hand, he was extremely excited that someone was able to comprehend the imperial sword steel. On the other hand, the person who comprehended the imperial sword steel was Yiguchen, whom he had always ignored. Although Han Shan did not openly oppose Yiguchen, his attitude was definitely not good. Ha! A genius who can comprehend the imperial sword steel is actually a blacksmith in the Han family. What a waste of talent! Cloud Emperor sighed. When Han Shan heard this, his expression became even more unnatural. He glared at Han Ziqiang. Han Ziqiang was also as silent as a cicada in winter, and her face was pale. Just as everyone was exclaiming over Yiguchen's performance, however, an extremely illusory figure actually appeared on the imperial sword tablet. When that figure appeared, all the members of the Han family, including Han Shan, could feel a connection between them. It's the ancestor of the Han family. Han Shan shouted. Even though he was an honorable martial artist, he did not hesitate and immediately bowed to the illusory figure. The rest of the Han family could feel the pressure from the bloodline, and they all knelt down together with Han Shan. Han Ziqiang, Han Xiaokui, and even Han Lingxian bowed. The illusory figure is the ancestor of the Han family. The illusory figure of the ancestor of the Han family has been summoned by Dugu Wubai. Everyone was once again shocked by the scene in front of them. Yiguchen stood there calmly. Of course, he did not bow. Yiguchen also knew that the illusory figure was not a primordial spirit. It was just a bit of spiritual energy left in the imperial sword steel, and it would dissipate soon. At this moment, the illusory figure of the ancestor that was floating above the imperial sword steel looked down at Yiguchen and said, "Descendant, if you kneel down and acknowledge me as your master and swear to protect the Han family, I will teach you the imperial sword art, the three ultimate holy swords." The illusory figure of the ancestor spoke. His voice was as loud as a bell, and it reverberated between heaven and earth. There was an uproar in the surroundings. Dugu Wubai really obtained the imperial sword art. As long as he is willing to kneel down and acknowledge me as his master, he will be able to obtain it. However, this is also related to the Han family. In the future, he will have to protect the Han family. Compared to the emperor-level sword art, this little sacrifice is nothing. Many voices of discussion rang out. These cultivators did not expect that they would be able to witness the birth of an imperial sword art today. The three ultimate holy swords. It's actually the three ultimate holy swords. Dugu Wubai, if you obtain it, not only will the great sun dragon origin fruit be yours, but I will also marry my three daughters to you. When Han Shan heard about the three ultimate holy swords, his eyes turned red, and they shone with an unprecedented light. The three ultimate holy swords were also recorded in the Han family's records. That was an extremely powerful royal-level sword art. Three swords were unleashed at the same time, and they could cut through the sun, moon, and stars. Is Han Shan going to sell his daughters? Many cultivators were stunned. When Han Ziqiang heard this, her face turned pale and her delicate body trembled. Damn it! The ferocity in Shenmubai's eyes could not be concealed. The flames of jealousy in his heart burned fiercely. As long as Yiguchen agreed to the request of the illusory figure of the Han family to kneel down and acknowledge him as his master, he would immediately obtain the three ultimate holy swords. He would also obtain the great sun dragon origin fruit and the Han family's three sisters. Countless envious gazes fell on Yiguchen, wishing that they could replace him. However, the surprising thing was, Yiguchen did not go wild with joy. His calm expression was strange. He did not immediately agree to the illusory figure's request. "Descendant, what do you choose?" The illusory figure asked in a clear voice. "Sorry, I refuse." Yiguchen's tone was extremely calm. There was no fluctuation in his voice. More than 300,000 cultivators present were stunned. Some of them even dug their ears, thinking that they had heard wrongly. Did I hear wrongly? That Dugu Wubai refused. The crowd was stunned at first, then they were in an uproar. This. Han Shan was also stunned. He stood rooted to the ground as if he had been struck by lightning. Han Lingxian and the other two sisters were also surprised. The three ultimate holy swords, the Great Sun Dragon Origin Fruit, and the three beauties. As long as Yi Guqin agreed and knelt down to acknowledge the illusory figure as his master, all of these would be at his fingertips. However, Yi Guqin refused. Everyone looked at Yi Guqin as if they were looking at a fool. Ha! What a joke! Shen Mubai could not help but laugh out loud. Was there anyone in the world who was more foolish than this person? Even Han Lingxian was extremely surprised. Even if Yi Guqin was not interested in beauties and did not care about the three sisters, why would he refuse an emperor-level sword art and sacred medicine? Yi Guqin's face was indifferent. Not to mention that he was a sword demon and had the pride of a sword demon. It was impossible for him to acknowledge anyone as his master. In terms of swordsmanship, Yi Guqin only acknowledged one master, Feng Manlu. Only Feng Manlu was worthy of being his master. What right did a mere illusory figure of the Han family's ancestor have to make him kneel and acknowledge him as his master? Chapter 844. Yi Guqin did indeed need the Great Sun Dragon Essence Fruit. Yi Guqin was also interested in learning the three ultimates holy sword. However, this did not mean that Yi Guqin would go against his conscience and kneel before the Han family's ancestor. That was not the sword demon's style. Therefore, Yi Guqin rejected it without hesitation. If he did not have any sage herbs, he could just find another one. It was not necessary for Yi Guqin to learn the emperor-level sword technique. No one could restrain Yi Guqin with this technique. Descendant, do you know how foolish your decision is? The ancestor's shadow snorted. Although it was only a wisp of soul energy, the pressure it emitted was enough to shake the surroundings. Shen Mubai and the others were sent flying. Yi Guqin was the only one who didn't move even though he didn't have any real qi. I cannot agree to your request. If you are willing to hand it over, the three ultimates holy sword will shine in my hands. If you are unwilling, then, let it be buried forever. Yi Guqin waved his hand and placed his hands behind his back. With his back facing the imperial sword steel, he walked out. Everyone was stunned. Everyone was stunned. Everyone was shocked. Yi Guqin was probably the only person who could treat the imperial sword tablet with such an attitude. I admire this Duga Wubai. I have no choice but to admire him. A sword cultivator clasped his hands and sighed. No matter how foolish Yi Guqin's choice was in their eyes. But at the very least, this boldness was not something an ordinary person could possess. Little brother. You. Han Shan was so anxious that he almost couldn't maintain his bearing as a venerable. He wanted nothing more than to threaten Yi Guqin and force him to agree. However, it was impossible in front of everyone. Li Jingtian and Li Nianyao looked at Yi Guqin with complicated gazes. They did not expect that Yi Guqin would be able to get what they wanted so easily. However, he was still unwilling to agree to the ancestors' request. In comparison, the so-called three supreme talents of the Chu-Yun dynasty paled in comparison. Humph. Although Shen Mubai's expression was extremely ugly, he was still able to suppress his jealousy. At least, in the end, Yi Guqin did not benefit from it. Just when everyone thought that Yi Guqin would return empty-handed, a wisp of aura suddenly flowed out of Yi Guqin's body. This wisp of aura was very restrained, and no one noticed it. It directly landed on the Han clan's ancestor's body. Rumble. The imperial sword steel trembled once more and rumbled as strands of sword qi suddenly surged out explosively. The illusory figure of the Han clan's ancestor also began to tremble violently, its body rippling like water. What's going on? Everyone was bewildered. Lord Ancestor. Han Shan's expression changed. Then, in front of everyone's incredulous eyes, the phantom of the Han clan's ancestor that floated above the imperial sword steel actually faced Yi Guqin and slowly knelt down. Boom! The moment the phantom of the ancestor knelt down in the air, all the steels in the entire steel-seeking forest exploded at the same time. Countless rocks and stones flew everywhere, and the rubble pierced through the air. Even the imperial sword steel that had stood tall for countless years began to crack, and there were continuous cracking sounds. What? What's going on? Oh my God, all the steels in the steel-seeking forest exploded. And the phantom of the Han clan's ancestor actually knelt down in front of Dugu Wubai. The surrounding 300,000 over warriors' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The scene before them had completely exceeded their imagination. This steel-seeking forest, how could? Han Shan's body trembled, and his lips trembled slightly. The steel-seeking forest was the ancestral land of the Han clan, and at that moment, it was destroyed. What made him even more incredulous was that the phantom of the Han clan's ancestor had actually knelt down in front of Yiguchen. What did that mean? Everyone from the Han clan was in a state of shock. They had just knelt down in front of the phantom of the ancestor, but the phantom of the ancestor was now kneeling down in front of Yiguchen. Didn't that mean that the entire Han clan was kneeling down in front of Yiguchen? At that thought, even Han Shan's expression was not normal, and he felt uncomfortable in his heart. Could it be Senior Su? Seeing this scene, Yiguchen was a little surprised, but he immediately understood. Su Qingyu's voice rang in Yiguchen's mind. Ha, a mere wisp of soul energy left behind by a false saint dares to put on airs in front of you? It merely leaked a wisp of my aura, Su Qingyu said with a faint smile. Yiguchen did not expect the Han clan's ancestor to be a false saint. Even so, it was nothing in front of a true heavenly tribulation saint like Su Qingyu. Strictly speaking, the phantom of the Han clan's ancestor was not kneeling down in front of Yiguchen, but Su Qingyu, the saint in Yiguchen's body. A moment later, the imperial sword steel exploded with a loud bang, sending rubble flying into the air. 3 rays of sword light directly entered Yiguchen's mind and manifested into lines of words. It was the imperial sword art, the triple ultimate holy sword. The triple ultimate holy sword has been given to the fated one. This place no longer needs to exist. The phantom of the ancestor said as he waved his hand. The countless rubble in the steel forest turned into dust and scattered in all directions. The illusory figure itself also dissipated. There was no longer any trace of Taoist rhyme in the mountain range. Everyone's eyes were staring blankly at Yiguchen. Han Shan's figure flashed, and he landed beside Yiguchen. He cupped his hands and asked, "Did you obtain the triple ultimate holy sword?" Although everyone had seen the 3 rays of sword light enter Yiguchen's mind, they were certain. Even so, they weren't too sure. Yiguchen didn't hide anything and nodded slightly. This nod of his caused the originally noisy mountain range to become completely silent. Only the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. That's great. Ha, it seems like you're really fated with the Han clan. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been saved by Xiaokue. Han Shan laughed. His expression was indescribably warm. Han Xiaokue was so excited that she jumped 3 feet into the air. Han Ziqiang's delicate body swayed slightly. Her face was deathly pale, and she couldn't even stand straight. She couldn't accept this fact no matter what. On the other hand, Han Lingxian looked deeply at Yiguchen. Even now, she still didn't understand the ins and outs of the matter. Dugu Wubai, that day at the training ground, it was you. Han Lingxian walked gracefully in front of Yiguchen and asked. Yiguchen nodded slightly. As expected, since it was you who taught Lingxian, then. When Han Lingxian thought of this, her beautiful eyes turned to Shinmubai. Her gaze didn't waver. Lingxian, listen to me. Maybe this is a misunderstanding. He's just a mortal. How could he? Shinmubai felt extremely guilty under Han Lingxuan's gaze. His back was drenched in cold sweat as he spoke intermittently. Enough, Shinmubai. It seems like my previous opinion of you wasn't biased. Han Lingxuan's tone was extremely cold. Her eyes were filled with disgust. She didn't expect Shinmubai to be such a despicable person. When the Han clan elites heard this, they all glared at Shinmubai. It turned out that Shinmubai had been pretending all along to deceive them. Chapter 845. As the saying went, the higher one stood, the harder one would fall. In the beginning, Shenmubai was highly anticipated by everyone. He was even praised to an extremely high position by Han Shan and the elites of the Han family. But now, Shenmubai had not performed well at the Imperial Sword Tablet. Even the so-called guidance he gave to Han Lingxian was a lie and an impostor. How could the Han family not hate him? Uncle Han Shan, it's not like that. Shenmubai's face was pale as he tried to explain. That's enough. The Imperial Sword Tablet has ended. Young Master Shen, you don't have to say anything. Shen Lai was present, so Han Shan would not say anything overboard. However, everyone could hear the coldness in his voice. Brother Han, this. Shen Lai's expression was unnatural. He had hoped that Shenmubai and Han Lingxian would be married. This way, the Han family and the Shen family would be united. Even the imperial family would not be able to do anything about this alliance. But now, everything was ruined by Yi Guqin. Thinking of this, Shen Lai looked at Yi Guqin with a murderous gaze. As if sensing something, Han Shan stood in front of Yi Guqin and said with a serious expression, "Everyone, the Imperial Sword Tablet has ended. Since young Dugu has comprehended the Imperial Sword technique, he should keep his promise." Young Dugu is the son-in-law of the Han family. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. No one had expected that Han Shan would actually keep his promise. In order to obtain the 3 ultimate holy swords, he did not hesitate to marry his 3 daughters to Yi Guqin. In an instant, many envious and jealous gazes were fixed on Yi Guqin. They wanted to replace him. Being able to marry one of the 3 beauties of the Han family was the goal of many young elites in the Yun dynasty. However, Yi Guqin had obtained all 3 of them. How could they not be jealous? Do I really have to marry him? Han Xiaokue glanced at Yi Guqin and blushed. To be honest, she had never thought of such a thing. But now that she thought about it carefully, she didn't have much resistance. Han Lingxian was silent. She only looked deeply at Yi Guqin, as if she wanted to see through him. On the other side, Li Jingtian shook his head and smiled bitterly. Shenmubai gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. His body trembled uncontrollably because of his anger. I don't want to. Right at this moment, a sharp and delicate voice suddenly sounded out. Everyone looked over and saw Han Ziqiang's delicate body trembling slightly. She gritted her teeth and said, "Even if Dugu Wubai can comprehend the 3 ultimate holy swords, so what? This only proves that his comprehension is good. But he doesn't have Jin Qi or soul power. He's a cripple. I don't want Ziqiang to marry such a cripple." You. Nonsense. Han Shan shouted coldly. Regardless of whether Yi Guqin was a cripple or not, at the very least, he was now in possession of the 3 ultimates holy sword. If Yi Guqin was unwilling to hand over the 3 ultimate holy swords in a fit of anger, the Han family would suffer a great loss. Second sister, didn't you say that if big brother Dugu comprehended the imperial sword steel, you would kneel in front of him and apologize? Han Xiaokue couldn't stand it anymore. This. Han Ziqiang was speechless. Her face turned green and white. She was speechless. Uncle, you have to think twice about this. Shenmubai hurriedly said when he saw this. Han Shan's face darkened. His eyes kept changing. Thinking about it this way, he felt that Han Ziqiang's words were not without reason. In terms of comprehension, Yi Guqin was indeed extraordinary. But he had no cultivation. To be honest, even Han Shan was a little hesitant. Of course, in order to obtain the 3 ultimate holy swords, Han Shan would naturally not say it. Shenmubai's eyes flashed coldly. He looked at Yi Guqin and said coldly, "So what if your comprehension is high? Only those with true strength are worthy of Lingxian. Do you dare to fight with me?" As soon as he said this, the crowd was in an uproar. Shenmubai was challenging Yi Guqin to a battle. But in the eyes of the crowd, Shenmubai was a stage 5 spiritual bridge prodigy. And Yiguchin was a mortal with no cultivation. No matter how high one's comprehension was, it couldn't be used as martial strength. That's right, Dugu Wubai. If you dare to accept Big Brother Mubai's challenge, then Ziqiang might think more highly of you. Han Ziqiang also fanned the flames. Han Ziqiang wanted to marry a true prodigy, not a useless person like Yiguchin. Shin Mubai's suggestion gave her this opportunity. Yiguchin would have been too ashamed to marry these two sisters if he had retreated in the face of difficulties. To be honest, this is a little too much, some of the surrounding cultivators secretly discussed. Shin Mubai actually challenged a mortal. This was simply bullying. No matter what, it couldn't be justified. What, you don't dare? If you can defeat Big Brother Mubai, then Ziqiang will be convinced. Not to mention kneeling down and apologizing, what's wrong with being your slave? Han Ziqiang raised her proud jade peaks and said provocatively. Enough. Han Shan shouted coldly. In his opinion, how could Yiguchin agree to such a suicidal proposal? Yiguchin glanced at Han Ziqiang and shook his head slightly. Pfft. When we met the blood demon bandits and saw you vomit blood, I knew you were a coward. Han Ziqiang mocked mercilessly. You're wrong. I never thought of marriage. Yiguchin shook his head. Are you looking for a way out? Han Ziqiang sneered. But I accept this challenge. In 7 days, I will fight with you. Yiguchin looked at Shin Mubai indifferently. Since Shin Mubai wanted to humiliate himself, then Yiguchin could only fulfill his wish. What, Dugu Wubai really agreed? Everyone was stunned, their faces filled with disbelief. In their eyes, even if Yiguchin had mastered the 3 ultimate holy swords, it was impossible for him to use it. It was like throwing an egg against a rock. He was overestimating himself. Alright, it's settled then. Shin Mubai's eyes lit up with joy. Although it was 7 days later, it did not make any difference to him. Could it be that Yiguchin could turn from a mortal to a martial arts expert in 7 days? Big Brother Dugu, don't be rash. Han Xiaokuei's expression changed. No one doubted Yiguchin's comprehension. However, no one thought highly of him in terms of martial arts. Little friend Dugu, you. Han Shan was also anxious. He was afraid that Yiguchin would be killed by Shin Mubai. Don't worry, family head Han. I will give you what you deserve. But the sage elixir. Yiguchin paused. Don't worry. The Han family still has some credibility. Han Shan patted his chest and guaranteed. Yiguchin nodded. With the Great Sun Dragon origin fruit, Yiguchin's physical body could be completely recovered. It was even possible for him to become a 2-star ancient god. At that time, even if he did not use his consciousness C and energy C, Shin Mubai would not be his match with the power of a 2-star ancient god. Hence, Shin Mubai's arrogant challenge was just digging a hole for himself. Chapter 846. As the comprehension of the Imperial Sword Steel ended, the shocking news began to spread throughout the Cloud Dynasty. The Imperial Sword Steel, which was said to be the most difficult to comprehend, had been comprehended by a mortal. The impact of such a huge contrast was sensational. But what was more interesting was the battle between Yiguchin and Shin Mubai in 7 days. Although everyone thought that the outcome of the battle was already decided, Yiguchin had comprehended the Imperial Sword Steel, which gave the battle a gimmick. One could imagine that the battle in Tianyuan City in 7 days would attract everyone's attention. Many people wanted to know what kind of courage this mortal genius who had comprehended the Imperial Sword Steel had to accept Shin Mubai's challenge. In the Han family mansion, in an extremely luxurious courtyard room, Yiguchin sat cross-legged on the bed. He was wearing a black robe and had returned to his previous attire. Han Shan naturally wouldn't let Yiguchin be a blacksmith anymore. Even Han Ziqiang had been reprimanded by Han Shan. Han Ziqiang was obviously even angrier at Yiguchin. But Yiguchin didn't care about that. The Han family residence in the Cloud Dynasty was only a temporary place for him to stay. Once he recovered his physical cultivation and had the strength to deal with Shinmubai, Yiguchin would leave the Han family residence and head to the Sword Dynasty. After all, the Sword Dynasty was Yiguchin's goal. Only when he became the Sword's son would he be qualified to participate in the Battle of Prodigies. However, Yiguchin was unfamiliar with the Sword Dynasty. That was also why he didn't head to the Sword Dynasty directly and only went there after he recovered his physical body. Only when he had the strength to protect himself could he act more freely in the Sword Dynasty. Thinking of this, Yiguchin flipped his wrist and took out a fruit. This fruit was crimson in color, and its surface was covered with layers upon layers of patterns that resembled dragon scales. It released a crimson brilliance, and when one touched it, they could feel a burning sensation, as if it was a miniature sun. Is this the great sun dragon essence fruit? Yiguchin's eyes glimmered as he sensed the surging sacred medicinal strength contained within the fruit in his hand. Sacred medicine was extremely rare. Even if it was just a low-grade sacred medicine, it would cause countless experts to fight over it. Since Yiguchin started cultivating until now, the number of sacred medicines that he came into contact with was also very few. Other than the 7-colored jade dragon ginseng and the reversal origin fruit, which he obtained for Su Jianshi and 100 Flowers child. Other than the 5 elements sacred fruit, Yiguchin had also used the ancient tree of enlightenment in his dantian. In terms of value alone, the tree of enlightenment was a supreme grade sacred medicine. This great sun dragon essence fruit could only be considered low grade. However, even if it was a low-grade medicine, its medicinal effects would still far surpass that of a top-grade medicine. Yiguchin, you can now take a preliminary look at the heaven-devouring secret technique recorded in the God Devourer. Perhaps it will help you refine the great sun dragon essence fruit. Su Qingyu's illusory primordial spirit floated out from the side. That's true. Yiguchin nodded slightly. As one of the 10 primordial secret techniques, the heaven-devouring secret technique was naturally extraordinary. Yiguchin's so close, yet worlds apart was derived from one of the 10 primordial secret techniques, the divine movement secret technique. Yiguchin was also very curious about the power of a complete primordial secret technique. Although his sea of consciousness was still, he could still use a little of his spiritual power. However, he couldn't overuse it. Thinking of this, Yiguchin closed his eyes and sent his spiritual power into the God Devourer demonic sword in his dantian. The God Devourer demonic sword's guard looked like a beast's mouth. Chaotic mist flowed within it like a black hole that could devour everything. There was a primal chaos space hidden within. Yiguchin's spiritual power entered it and saw the half of the pure demon body and the connate purple chi. Yiguchin planned to integrate the connate purple chi into his doppelganger in the future, so he didn't want to refine it himself. Slowly, Yiguchin's spiritual power repeatedly scanned the sword. Suddenly, he found that ancient characters vaguely appeared on the God Devourer demonic sword. It was the cultivation method of the heaven-devouring secret technique. Such ancient characters. I can't understand them. Yiguchin was slightly speechless. However, this also proved that the heaven-devouring secret technique was indeed inherited in the God Devourer demonic sword. It's okay. I can recognize it, Su Qingyu said. Subsequently, Yiguchin finally obtained the cultivation method of the heaven-devouring secret technique. However, after understanding the heaven-devouring secret technique, Yiguchin's eyes were faintly filled with shock. The heaven-devouring secret technique was indeed one of the 10 primordial secret techniques. The spirit-devouring secret technique that he had cultivated before was almost an infinitely simplified version of the heaven-devouring secret technique. Although it was an infinitely simplified version, there was no comparison at all. The gap between the two was too big. For the spirit-devouring secret technique, the only effect is to devour the surrounding spirit chi of heaven and earth to skyrocket one's cultivation realm. However, this is only a small part of the heaven-devouring secret technique. Yiguchin was slightly surprised. Although the heaven-devouring secret technique was a secret technique, it was more like a cultivation method that had many auxiliary abilities. Not only could it devour the spirit chi of heaven and earth to skyrocket one's cultivation realm. It could also use the devouring power to refine all kinds of difficult-to-refine sacred medicine, energy, metals, minerals, and so on. It could also use the devouring power as an offensive and defensive means. All in all, the heaven-devouring secret technique almost used the devouring power to the extreme. Of course, in order to use the heaven-devouring secret technique to the extreme, the devouring power of the God-Devourer demonic sword was required. The heaven-devouring secret technique has a total of 5 levels. The devouring effect will skyrocket with each level comprehended. Each level has a unique devouring skill, Yiguchen muttered to himself. However, in order to truly cultivate the heaven-devouring secret technique, one must at least activate the devouring power of the God-Devourer demonic sword. With Yiguchen's current strength, it was obviously impossible for him to use it. Although you can't truly cultivate the heaven-devouring secret technique for the time being, you can still use a little bit of the devouring power to refine the Great Sun Dragon origin fruit, Su Qingyu said. Alright, I'll try. Yiguchen did not hesitate and began to comprehend the heaven-devouring secret technique. Although the heaven-devouring secret technique was not a sword technique, Yiguchen had the enlightenment ancient tree. His comprehension was not fast, but it was not slow either. Soon, 2 days passed. Yiguchen slowly opened his eyes. A pair of pitch-black eyes faintly carried a deep and serene look. Begin refining. The Nirvana demonic flame spewed out of Yiguchen's palm and melted the Great Sun Dragon origin fruit into a pulp. Then, he swallowed it into his body. In an instant, Yiguchen felt as if he had swallowed a large mouthful of lava. An extremely hot and surging power of the sacred medicine flowed through Yiguchen's body. His skin immediately turned red from the heat. Ancient God Tactic. Yiguchen activated the Ancient God Tactic and transformed into his Ancient God form. Even so, Yiguchen could not suppress the terrifying power of the sacred medicine. His body swelled up like a balloon. Yiguchen, now is the time to activate the devouring power. Su Qingyu said. Yiguchen's body shook. A wisp of black devouring demonic chi seeped out from the God-Devourer demonic sword. It turned into a miniature black hole in Yiguchen's body. Then, the surging power of the sacred medicine was absorbed and refined into the purest medicinal power. Chapter 847. The power of the Great Sun Dragon Yuan fruit was overwhelming. Not to mention Yiguchen, even a venerable like Han Shan would have to mix it with various herbs or even refine it into elixir pills. No one was like Yiguchen, who directly swallowed the whole thing into his body. The violent power of the elixir could almost make a person explode. But Yiguchen was different. His physical body was too strong. In addition, to break through to 2-star ancient god, he needed the power of the Great Sun Dragon Yuan fruit. Hence, he swallowed it directly. If not for the devouring power, Yiguchen would have to pay a huge risk to refine it completely. But now, with the devouring demonic aura as a black hole, the violent power was refined into the purest elixir. Furthermore, the tempering effect would not be lost because of this. That was the benefit of the devouring power. Any elixir or elixir pills could be refined directly without worrying about any accidents. With the help of the devouring demonic aura, Yiguchen could refine the Great Sun Dragon Yuan fruit safely. The cultivation continued for another 3 days. After 3 days, Yiguchen finally refined the Great Sun Dragon Yuan fruit completely. At that moment, his skin seemed to be flowing with a blazing brilliance like the sun. His blood was surging. Although there was no aura of genuine energy, the power of his physical body was enough to make people tremble in fear. Break! As soon as Yiguchen finished speaking, his entire body shook violently. It was as if there was thunder rolling in his body. The ancient god's heart that was sealed also released more ancient god's blood to help Yiguchen's physical body transform. Ancient god light patterns appeared one after another. They were more mysterious and complicated than before. In between Yiguchen's eyebrows, the second star mark gradually appeared and became solid. Is this the transformation of the ancient god clan? Su Qingyu clicked his tongue in wonder. The 100 tribes were a distant legend. In Nantian region, it was rare to see living creatures of the 100 tribes. At some point in time, the second ancient god's star in the space between Yiguchen's eyebrows completely condensed. In an instant, Yiguchen's body surged with divine power, releasing boundless divine light and surging power. Seeing this, Su Qingyu waved his hand, causing an invisible barrier to envelop the surroundings, isolating the forceful ripple. Although his primordial spirit didn't have much combat strength, it could still isolate the fluctuations. "I've finally broken through," the light faded away, and the divine power was gradually extinguished. Yiguchen exited his ancient god form. Although Yiguchen's external injuries had recovered, there were still many scars left behind. But now, Yiguchen's body was sparkling and translucent, perfectly balanced and harmonious. Although there were no bulging muscles, under the well-proportioned body, there was an incomparably terrifying physical strength. "After breaking through to 2-star ancient god, my body has become at least 8 times stronger. I can also use ancient god power to perform some ancient god clan martial arts," Yiguchen murmured. When Yiguchen was a 1-star ancient god, the only ancient god clan martial art that he could perform was the ancient god spear. But now, after breaking through to 2-star, Yiguchen could use more techniques. His body could also unleash 8 times his combat strength. It could be said that it was too easy for Yiguchen to deal with Shinmubai in his 2-star ancient god state. "Finally, I have the ability to protect myself." Yiguchen was slightly relieved. Without strength, it would be a little uncomfortable no matter what. But now, Yiguchen already had the ability to roam the Sword Dynasty. As for recovering his Sea of Energy and Sea of Consciousness, in a first dynasty like the Sword Dynasty, there should be a chance to obtain rare items such as sacred medicine and soul crystals. There are still 2 days left. Let's take a look at the 3 ultimate holy swords. Yiguchen's eyes flashed, and he closed his eyes to comprehend the 3 ultimate holy swords. Although he had given the cultivation method of the 3 ultimate holy swords to Han Shan, he still had a trick up his sleeve. There were 3 moves in the 3 ultimate holy swords: Starbreaker Sword, Moon Sword, and Sun Sword. What Yiguchen gave was indeed the complete version of the 3 moves. He did not lie to Han Shan. But with Yiguchen's comprehension ability, he had also comprehended the variations of the 3 moves. 2 of them could be combined to form a stronger move. Moreover, only when the 3 moves were combined could the full power of the 3 ultimate holy swords be unleashed. Of course, these were comprehended by Yiguchen himself, and they were not part of the requirements. He was also not interested in teaching Han Shan everything. After all, Yiguchen knew the Han family's true colors. A day had passed, and Yiguchen had a preliminary understanding of the mysteries of the Starbreaking Sword. Cultivating this kind of emperor-level sword technique could not be rushed, so Yiguchen let out a sigh and pushed the door open. There was only 1 day left, and it was the arranged battle with Shinmubai. Yiguchen was very relaxed and prepared to adjust his mood. After this battle, he would leave the Han family. However, as soon as he pushed the door open, Yiguchen saw it. A beautiful figure in a royal blue dress was standing quietly at the door of the courtyard. She had a jade-like face without any makeup and was as bright as the moon. Her long black hair reached her slender waist. Her curvaceous figure made people unable to stop themselves from lingering. Yiguchen also understood why this woman was so popular in the Yun dynasty. Her appearance and talent were indeed extraordinary. But Yiguchen's eyes were very calm. He saw the fallen leaves on Han Lingxuan's shoulder. Han Lingxian had been standing there for a long time. "You've finally come out of seclusion." Han Lingxuan's beautiful eyes lit up when she saw Yiguchen come out. "How long have you been waiting here?" Yiguchen asked. "Since you entered," Han Lingxian said with a smile. She did not dare to rashly enter Yiguchen's residence, so she waited outside. "Miss Han, why are you waiting for me here?" Yiguchen asked again. "There's still 1 day left, enough for you to leave. Lingxian still has some celestial crystals, elixirs, and so on. You can leave the Han family directly." Han Lingxian took out a vitality ring. Yi Guchen did not take it and said indifferently, "Why do you say that, Miss Han?" Han Lingxian was slightly taken aback when she saw this and said, "The arranged battle is in 1 day. I know a little about Shinmubai's temperament. He will definitely not let you off easily. If you leave now, you can still save your life." Obviously, Han Lingxian was waiting here to make Yi Guchen leave and not let him participate in the arranged battle. "Miss Han doesn't like me?" Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. "Gongzi Dugu, your talent and comprehension in the sword Dao have indeed surprised Lingxian. It can be said that as long as you can cultivate, you will definitely be a peerless sword Dao genius, but..." Han Lingxian wanted to say something but stopped. However, the meaning of her words was very clear. Yi Guchen was indeed a genius with off the charts. But without martial cultivation, no matter how good his comprehension was, it was useless. He would definitely not be able to defeat Shinmubai. "Ah, thank you for your concern, Miss Han, but Shinmubai is not enough to make me run away." Yi Guchen shook his head and laughed. When he was at the Qi refinement stage, he dared to face Gu Xiaoyang at the life and death chamber. At the life and death chamber, he even dared to seriously injure Di Haotian at the divine dwelling stage. If a mere Shinmubai could make him avoid the battle, it would be too laughable. "Gongzi Dugu, you." Han Lingxian gently bit her red lips. She was grateful to Yi Guchen for his advice, and did not want to see Yi Guchen fall in the hands of Shinmubai. But she did not expect that Yi Guchen would not give her any face. "Ah, let's wait and see." Yi Guchen smiled faintly and did not say anything more. Han Lingshuan's eyes were complicated, and she sighed in her heart. Han Lingxian thought to herself, "Even if it's for the sake of giving me some advice, I'll still save his life." Chapter 848. 7 days passed quickly after the incident at the Imperial Sword Tablet. As time passed, the crowd in Tianyuan City showed no signs of slowing down. Instead, it became even more turbulent. This was because the news of Shinmubai and Yi Guchen's battle had already spread far and wide. Logically speaking, such a battle without any suspense should not cause a commotion. However, after the incident at the Imperial Sword Tablet, Yi Guchen created one miracle after another, shocking everyone. He took out the Tree of Enlightenment and taught Han Xiaokui, causing her to amaze the world. He casually borrowed Han Lingshuan's sword, swept it 3 times, comprehended the Imperial Sword Tablet, and even triggered the ancestor's shadow. The most shocking thing was that the Han clan's ancestor's shadow knelt before Yi Guchen and gave him an emperor-level sword technique. Even if it happened to Shinmubai, Han Lingxian, and other geniuses, it would still cause a commotion. Not to mention that the person who created the miracle was just an ordinary person with no cultivation. This was the reason why this battle attracted so many people. They all wanted to know if this ordinary young man who had created a miracle at the Imperial Sword Tablet would shock the world again. Of course, most people did not believe in the so-called miracle. Even if it happened once, could it happen a second time or a third time? It was because of all these reasons that this battle attracted so much attention. The location of the battle was set at the battle arena in Tianyuan City. Yi Guchen walked out of the room in a black robe. His body was thin and straight, and his handsome face was as calm as an ancient well. As soon as he walked out of the courtyard, he saw Han Shan, the 3 sisters, and the elites of the Han clan waiting for him. Seeing Yi Guchen walk out, Han Xiaokui ran to Yi Guchen's side anxiously and said with a sobbing tone, "Brother Dugu, why don't we not go and just let it go? You can stay in the Han clan in the future." Han Xiaokui did not want to see Yi Guchen lose to Shinmubai. "That's right, little friend Dugu. If you give up, I can help you put in a good word for you," Han Shan said with a faint smile. Yi Guchen had allowed the Han clan to possess an emperor-level sword technique, but he had not allowed the Shin clan or the imperial family to obtain it. Han Shan felt that he had picked up a great bargain. In addition, even though Yi Guchen did not have any martial arts cultivation, he was gifted in terms of perception. Perhaps he would be of use in the future. Therefore, Han Shan was not stingy in helping Yi Guchen. "I've already made up my mind. There's no need to say anything." Yi Guchen shook his head. Why did everyone think that he would definitely lose? Ha, third sister, you don't have to do this. Don't you know that heroes don't live forever? If he wants to be a hero, just let him be. Han Ziqiang was very relaxed and said in a strange tone. She wanted to see Yi Guqin cut a sorry figure with her own eyes. Only then would she be able to release her feelings of humiliation. Let's go. Yi Guqin said no more. He was not bored enough to argue with Han Ziqiang and the others. After that, Yi Guqin and the Han clan went to the arena in Tianyuan City. The Tianyuan arena was located in the center of the city. It was an extremely wide arena. It was also a place for many martial artists to settle disputes and fight. At this moment, the surroundings of the Tianyuan battle arena were filled with people's heads. There was a sea of people, and the noise was endless. The imperial family has already arrived. Some martial artists looked at the arena and the people sitting high up in the stands. The Cloud Emperor, Li Jingtian, Li Nianyao, and the others were all there. Father, brother, why do we have to come and watch a battle without any suspense? Li Nianyao curled her lips and said. She was surprised that Yi Guqin had comprehended the imperial sword's steel in the end. At the same time, she was a little unhappy. Why did they, the heavenly talents, not comprehend it, but a mere mortal could? I have a feeling that this man is not simple. The Cloud Emperor said faintly. Sister, please be patient. At least we can talk about Shinmubai's real situation, Li Jingtian said. After a while, Yi Guqin and the Han clan arrived. The entire martial arts arena was in an uproar almost instantly. Countless eyes fell on Yi Guqin at the same time, looking at him curiously. That must be Dugu Wubai, right? He doesn't have 3 heads and 6 arms. He is indeed immortal. There is not a trace of genuine chi fluctuation on his body. How dare he accept the challenge with courage? I wonder how he comprehended the imperial sword steel. Was it really just luck? Many people were whispering to each other. But obviously, most people were not optimistic about Yi Guqin's chances. After Yi Guqin arrived, he just stood there calmly, waiting for the battle to start. Han Xiaokui looked worried. Han Lingxian also frowned slightly. She did not understand why Yi Guqin would do something like this, something that was like an egg striking a stone. Only Han Ziqiang crossed her arms in front of her chest, waiting to see Yi Guqin make a fool of himself. While they were waiting, the members of the Shin clan finally showed themselves. The Shin family is here. Hey, who is the man standing beside Shinmubai? Look at his clothes, there is a bronze badge. Could it be? Everyone's eyes turned to the Shin family. Shin Lai, the head of the family, and Shinmubai, needless to say. Next to Shinmubai, there was a young man in a purple and gold robe. There was a touch of arrogance in his mouth, looking at the people around him with a condescending gaze. Even when his eyes swept over the Cloud Emperor, there was no sense of fear or awe. The Cloud Emperor frowned slightly, but when he saw the bronze badge on the young man's chest, his eyes narrowed. Hey, who is the man next to Shinmubai? Han Xiaokui asked. The Han family was also puzzled, because they saw that Shinmubai was half a step behind the young man, and there was even a slight hint of respect and flattery on his face. Logically speaking, with Shinmubai's status in the Yun dynasty, there should be no one in the younger generation who could be treated like this by him. Could it be? When she saw the bronze badge on the young man's chest, Han Lingshuan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if she had thought of something. Ha, you have some backbone. Shinmubai glanced at Yi Guqin, and then looked away. It seemed that in his opinion, Yi Guqin was no match for him at all. This battle was just a formality. Everyone, let me introduce you to my good friend who I have invited to watch the battle today. He is from the Sword Dynasty, the Hua family of the Sword Alliance, young Master Hua Tengfei. He is also a bronze badge disciple of Tensei College, one of the 5 major colleges in the Sword Dynasty. Shinmubai shouted loudly, with a smile on his face, as if he was extremely proud and honored. However, when these words came out, it really shocked everyone. What, he is actually the pride of the Sword Dynasty. He is actually the young master of the Hua family. The Hua family is a well-known top sword Dao family in the Sword Alliance. And this person is actually a disciple of Tensei College. Everyone from the Izumo dynasty was shocked by what they saw. Shin Mubai felt even more honored, and there was a hint of a playful smile on his face, staring at Yiguchin. It seemed to mean that in terms of strength, you are not as good as me, and in terms of connections, you are still not as good as me. Looking at Shin Mubai's provocative eyes, Yiguchin was silent, and thought to himself. I wonder if Brother Kenpo has returned to the Sword Dynasty. Chapter 849. When Yiguchin first learned about the Sword Dynasty, it was from Kenpo. And what was Kenpo's identity? He was the sword son of the Sword Dynasty. He was equivalent to a prince of a dynasty. Even if he was only ranked 9th among the 13 sword sons, it didn't affect his status. As for the so-called Sword Alliance, he was a young talent of the Hua family. Although Yiguchin didn't know much about him, he knew that this person's identity couldn't be compared to Kenpo's. Yiguchin could vaguely sense that Hua Tengfei's strength was around Tiandi Lingxiao's. In that case, Brother Kenpo must have been hiding his strength. Yiguchin secretly thought. Previously, he sensed that Kenpo's cultivation was only around the 7th stage. But now that he thought about it, with his identity as the Sword Son, it shouldn't be only at the 7th stage. Could it be that the mask has the effect of hiding one's true cultivation? Yiguchin thought to himself. But now wasn't the time to think about this. In fact, Yiguchin didn't know much about the Sword Dynasty. But Kenpo vowed to him that as long as Yiguchin came to the Sword Dynasty, with his talent, it wouldn't be difficult for him to obtain the position of Sword Son. I didn't expect Shin Mubai to call such a person to come here. Han Lingxuan's expression didn't look too good. Is there anything special about this person's identity? Yiguchin asked faintly. Gongzi Duge hasn't been to the Sword Dynasty, so it's normal that you don't know. The ruler of the Sword Dynasty isn't the imperial family, but the Sword Alliance, a behemoth composed of many Sword Dao families and rogue cultivators. And this Hua family is the top family in the Sword Alliance, with a false saint expert overseeing it. Han Lingxian said. She clearly knew more about the Sword Dynasty than Yiguchin. I see. Yiguchin nodded slightly. No wonder the people of the Chuyun dynasty were so shocked when Hua Tengfei's identity was revealed. Not to mention the entire Sword Dao alliance, just the Hua family, which had a pseudo-saint expert, was enough to suppress the entire Yun dynasty. Of course, Yiguchin could tell that Hua Tengfei was not a core disciple of the Hua family. What kind of power is Tensei College? Yiguchin looked at the bronze badge on Hua Tengfei's chest. The Sword Dynasty is most famous for its 5 great academies. They are known as the gathering places for sword cultivators. Apart from the overlord forces, most of the sword cultivators in the South Horizon region are gathered there. Han Lingxian explained. When Yiguchin heard this, there was a hint of interest in his eyes. The 5 great academies of the Sword Dynasty. Interesting. Of course, people like Di Haoyan, Gu Xiaoyang, Jun Xiaoyao, and Yitsang Yue were all geniuses of the overlord forces. Naturally, they would not lower themselves to join the Sword Dynasty's academies. But apart from these geniuses of the overlord forces, the rest of the sword cultivators in the South Horizon region would probably choose the 5 great academies of the Sword Dynasty as a place to cultivate. One could imagine how many sword cultivators would gather in the 5 great academies. It was no wonder that the Sword Dynasty had such strength and was ranked first among the 100 great dynasties. Ling Xian will also go to the Sword Dynasty soon to see if there is a chance to cultivate in the 5 great academies. Han Lingxian said with a hint of yearning in her beautiful eyes. She turned to stare at Yiguchin. With Yiguchin's monstrous comprehension, he would probably cause a stir in the 5 great academies. Unfortunately, it's just cultivation. Han Lingxian sighed inwardly. It was too cruel for a swordsman to have monstrous talent but no cultivation. But Yiguchin's eyes were faintly shining. He also wanted to see how powerful the sword cultivators of the 5 great academies were. Brother Shen, is this your opponent? Or did I see wrongly? Isn't he just a mortal? Hua Tengfei glanced at Yi Guchen with a careless smile on his face. He relied on his identity and background. In this dynasty, almost no one dared to provoke him. Brother Hua, you don't know. Although this person is a mortal, he has some skills. Shinmubai's face was cold as he told him about the imperial sword steel. Shinmubai, you. Han Shan glared fiercely. This Shinmubai had no scruples. If Hua Tengfei wanted to take away the imperial sword technique of the Han family, Han Shan would be in big trouble. This time, even Han Ziqiang, who had always admired Shinmubai, had an unnatural expression on her face. Shinmubai's action was a bit of a trap for the Han family. Oh, so that's how it is. He only has comprehension, but he's just a mortal. Hua Tengfei's mouth twitched in disdain. Seeing that Hua Tengfei did not seem interested in the imperial sword technique of the Han family, Han Shan secretly sighed in relief. But thinking about it, with the Hua family's foundation, how could they not have an imperial sword technique? Brother Shen, I'll give you 15 minutes to deal with this person. Then, invite these ladies to a small gathering. Hua Tengfei's lips curled into a playful smile as he stared at the three sisters of the Han family. The three beauties of the Han family each had their own style. Han Xiaokui was lively and playful, while Han Ziqiang was charming and charming. Han Lingxian did not need to be mentioned. Even in Hua Tengfei's Tensei College, such a beautiful girl was rare. Hua Tengfei's gaze was like a snake as he scanned Han Lingshuan's delicate body. His gaze lingered on her slender waist for a moment, and the smile on his lips widened. Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes hid her disgust, but she did not dare to open her mouth to scold him, because it might bring disaster to the Han family. Facing the Hua family of the Sword Dao Alliance, not to mention the Han family, even the entire Cloud dynasty could not afford to offend them. Seeing this, Yi Guchen took a step forward and stood in front of Han Lingxian. It was not that he was being kind, or that he was interested in Han Lingxian. It was that Han Lingxian knew how to repay kindness. Previously, she had kindly advised him to leave. Yi Guchen admired her character. She looked at Yi Guchen, who was standing in front of her without hesitation and did not say anything. Han Lingshuan's heart skipped a beat. She actually felt a sense of security from Yi Guchen. You. Hua Tengfei's eyes darkened. A mortal without any aura of cultivation dared to hinder him. Alright, Dugu Wubai, since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Come up and accept your death. Shinmubai stomped on the ground, his figure leaping towards the arena. He was dressed in white, and his body was full of true qi, forming a cyclone around him. His aura was impressive, and it gave off a sense of oppression. He is indeed one of the top 3 prodigies. The surrounding warriors exclaimed. Compared to Shinmubai's aura. On the other hand, Yi Guchen slowly stepped onto the battle arena. He was still like a mortal, without any aura. Comparing the two, the difference in aura was too great. Sigh. Han Shan and the rest shook their heads. Yi Guchen had already lost in terms of aura, not to mention other things. Heh. Now I have to admire your courage to accept death. Shinmubai's attitude was condescending as he sneered. Yi Guchen stood with his hands behind his back, expressionless as he spoke slowly. Cut the crap. If I can't defeat you in 3 moves, I will give you my head. Chapter 850. If I can't defeat you in 3 moves, I'll give you my head with both hands. Yi Guchen spoke in an indifferent tone. His voice was like a thunderclap that reverberated in the ears of all the martial artists present. If he couldn't defeat Shinmubai in 3 moves, he would end his own life. Not to mention Yi Guchen, even Han Lingxian and Li Jingtian, who were also the top 3 prodigies, did not have the slightest confidence that they could defeat Shinmubai. As for defeating him in 3 moves, that was even more ridiculous. What a joke. I thought that Dugu Wubai was at least a smart person since he was able to comprehend the Imperial Sword Tablet. Who would have thought that he would be so stupid? That's right. He's just a mortal. Even if he fails, it's admirable that he has the courage to challenge Shin Mubai. However, his arrogant words are displeasing. Many of the martial artists present snorted. Originally, they had admired Yi Guchen's courage. However, Yi Guchen's arrogance made them very disgusted. Since when could a mortal without any martial arts cultivation be so condescending towards a prodigy of the martial arts? Ha, interesting. What an interesting mortal. Hua Tengfei's eyes were also filled with disdain. Arrogant and conceited. Han Ziqiang was even more disgusted with Yi Guchen. Being weak didn't mean anything, but if he was still so arrogant, then it was annoying. Big brother Dugu. Han Xiaokui knew Yi Guchen's character well. He would never boast. Since he said that, he naturally felt that it was a very normal thing. Xiaokui, you've interacted with young Master Dugu the most. Does he really have such confidence? Even Han Lingxian found it hard to believe that Yi Guchen could defeat Shin Mubai in 3 moves. After all, that was something that even she could not do. Big brother Dugu is definitely not the kind of person who thinks too highly of himself. If he says he can do it, then he can do it. Han Xiaokui was extremely certain. Ha 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 ha, Dugu Wubai, you've succeeded in making me laugh. As expected of a clown, you still don't forget to play to the gallery. Since that's the case, let me expose your pathetic lies. Shin Mubai sneered, too lazy to even draw his sword. He casually struck out with his palm, looking extremely carefree. He wanted to crush Yi Guchen with a single palm strike in the most elegant manner possible. In Yi Guchen's eyes, a dark light surged as ancient god power flowed through his veins. He also punched out, colliding with Shin Mubai's palm. Has he given up on himself? He actually didn't even use his martial arts. Many people were stunned when they saw this scene. They then shook their heads and sighed. Shin Mubai casually attacked because he had the strength to do so. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, only threw out a simple punch. That was not a wise move. Oh, how ignorant. This person's arm will definitely be broken by Brother Shen. Hua Tengfei sneered. Obviously, he was somewhat bothered by the fact that Yi Guchen had blocked in front of Han Lingxian. Crack. Accompanied by the scalp-numbing sound of bones cracking, everyone present felt as if their bones had been broken. As expected. Hua Tengfei smiled proudly. However, before the smile on his face could completely spread, he heard a familiar scream. That scream was like a pig being slaughtered. It was incomparably mournful and shook everyone's eardrums. This voice did not come from Yi Guchen's mouth. It came from Shin Mubai, whose face was distorted. His figure retreated rapidly, coughing up blood from the corner of his mouth. His entire left arm looked as if it had been crushed by a huge rock. Many white bone spurs pierced out from under his skin. It was obvious that his entire left arm had been crippled by Yi Guchen in an instant. There was a dead silence between heaven and earth. It was as if the air had stopped flowing. Only the violent heartbeat could be heard. What did they just see? A mortal had sent the famous Shin Mubai of the Chu Yun dynasty flying with a single punch and crippled his left arm. Many people swallowed their saliva dryly, their eyes filled with disbelief. After a long while, the uproar caused by the extreme shock and absent-mindedness spread out in all directions like a tide. Tell me, this is not true. This is crazy. Is Dugu Wubai really immortal? An earth-shattering clamor shook the entire Tianyuan martial arena. The 3 sisters of the Han family were all stunned. Han Lingxian and Han Xiaokui's beautiful faces were filled with astonishment. Han Ziqiang's face was pale. Her delicate body trembled slightly, and she could not believe her eyes. Even the Cloud Emperor, Han Shan, and the other honorables of the Heavenly Palace could not hide their astonishment. Damn it, how dare you hurt my son? Shen Lai's aura exploded. Shen Lai, stop. Do you want to break the promise of the battle? Cloud Emperor said. If they could use this battle to suppress the Shen family's reputation, it would be best for the imperial family. How can it be? Impossible, I don't believe it. Shin Mubai covered his crippled left arm with one hand, and his eyes were bloodshot. The heart-wrenching pain made his handsome face contort slightly. An extremely strong unwillingness appeared in Shin Mubai's eyes. He did not believe it. Myriad Spirit Seal. Shin Mubai once again displayed one of the Shin family's lower-grade imperial martial arts. Terrifying true energy rolled in his right palm, and it immediately turned into a huge milky white seal. It seemed to have the power to suppress mountains and rivers, and it rushed toward Yiguchin. He wanted to kill Yiguchin with one blow. Feeling the powerful fluctuation of Shin Mubai's move, the martial artists present were slightly shocked. This move was not something an ordinary genius could withstand. Maybe Shin Mubai was careless and did not display his skills. This time, Dugu Wubai is finished. Some martial artists speculated. However, most of the spectators remained silent. After all, Yiguchin's physical strength had already surprised them. When Yiguchin saw Shin Mubai's killing move coming, he did not hesitate to activate the ancient god tactic. His body grew to 9 feet tall, and the ancient god light runes covered his entire body. Between his eyebrows, 2 resplendent star imprints appeared. This meant that Yiguchin's physical strength was 8 times stronger than before. Yiguchin raised his hand and grasped the void. Bright golden light surged and gathered into a golden spear. It was the ancient god clan's martial arts, the ancient god spear. Although Yiguchin had not recovered his sea of energy and sea of consciousness, he could use the ancient god power to activate the ancient god clan's unique skill. Boom! Yiguchin threw the spear into the void, and it pierced through the void toward Shin Mubai. The fluctuation seemed to be able to penetrate everything in the world, and it caused the void to ripple with golden light. Boom! The ancient god spear collided with the spiritual seal, and there was a violent fluctuation. Then, all the spectators on the spectator stand looked on in disbelief. Crack! Without much collision, the ancient god's spear directly broke through the spiritual seal and pierced through Shin Mubai's shoulder, causing him to cough up blood again. He was in a sorry state. No. How is this possible? What kind of power is that? Shin Mubai roared. His hair was disheveled, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He had completely lost his handsome demeanor, and he looked like a gambler who had lost a bet. There is one last move. Shin Mubai's eyes were filled with blood-red anger. He immediately drew out his sword. It was a supreme-grade divine weapon with mystical runes. At the same time, he used a powerful emperor-level sword skill from the Shin family along with his sword Essence of Rain. Sword Essence of Rain, Fatal Blow of Rainy Night. Chapter 851. Endless anger and humiliation flooded Shin Mubai's heart. He no longer held back and took out his sword. At the same time, he performed the Sword Essence of Rain and his trump card, the Rainy Night Final Blow. Rumble. The vigorous genuine energy of the 5th level heaven and earth spiritual bridge burst out from Shin Mubai's body. In an instant, the entire Tianyuan martial arts arena seemed to have darkened. The heavy rain poured down. Everyone was shocked to discover that every single drop of rainwater seemed to contain sword chi that caused their hearts to palpitate. Shin Mubai is going to perform his trump card. It's the Rainy Night Final Blow. I'm afraid that even Han Lingxian and Li Jingtian can't take it easily. Seeing Shin Mubai's powerful aura, all the martial artists' faces changed. Even Hua Tingfei's face revealed a strange expression. Even he was slightly surprised by the power of this move. However, as Hua Tingfei's follower, the stronger Shin Mubai was, the more respect Hua Tingfei would have. Now, it should be over. Hua Tingfei smiled. Oh no. Han Lingshuan's face changed color. As one of the 3 supreme talents, Han Lingxian naturally knew that this move was Shin Mubai's trump card. It would be difficult for her to take it. Yiguchin's performance just now was surprising. However, it was only the power of his physical body. Just as Han Lingxian was about to help, Han Shan stopped her. No one can interfere in the fight between the two of them. Han Shan said in a deep voice. But Han Lingxian clenched her hands. Sister Lingxian, trust brother Dugu. Although Han Lingxian was also worried, she believed in Yi Guqin. Dugu Wubai, die. Shen Mubai's eyes were blood red as he slashed out with his sword. The surrounding rainwater, together with the terrifying sword energy that tore through the air, pierced towards Yi Guqin. The rain that filled the sky swept out with Shen Mubai's sword. One could imagine just how powerful it was. In the face of Shen Mubai's fatal blow, Yi Guqin's face turned solemn. If he was at his peak, Shen Mubai's sword would not be a threat. However, Yi Guqin's body was incomplete and he could only use his physical strength and ancient god power temporarily. Even so, it was enough. Yi Guqin raised his hand and grabbed the void. Boundless ancient god power burst out from his body, and golden light surged like a tide. In the end, it transformed into a resplendent golden saint seal. It was as blazing and vigorous as the sun, bringing with it the power to suppress the world. It was the unique skill of the ancient god tribe. With Yi Guqin's 2-star ancient god cultivation, besides the ancient god spear, he could finally perform another ancient god clan martial arts. The holy seal was holy seal art. King Heavenly I had used it before. Although Yi Guqin was only a 2-star ancient god, he could not fully unleash the power of the holy seal art. He could not be compared to King Heavenly I, but its power was definitely not weaker than an emperor-level martial skill. Suppress. As Yi Guqin said that word, the golden holy seal that was like a sun suddenly pressed down on Shen Mubai. Wherever it passed, the sword energy and rainwater melted. Shen Mubai's move was easily broken by the golden holy seal art. In the end, it pressed down on Shen Mubai in front of everyone's shocked eyes. Pfft! Fresh blood gushed out of Shen Mubai's mouth like it was free. His sternum was also shattered, emitting cracking sounds. His internal organs seemed to have shifted and he fell to the ground in pain. A human-shaped hole appeared in the fighting arena. It was surrounded by cracks and Shen Mubai was lying in it like a dead dog. Dead silence, the entire Tianyuan fighting arena seemed to be frozen. Only Shen Mubai, who was lying in the hole, coughed up blood weakly and resounded in all directions. Shen Mubai lost? Many people still couldn't believe it and were a little dazed. One of the 3 supreme talents of the Chu Yun dynasty, a level 5 heaven and earth spiritual bridge talent, lost to an ordinary person. After a short period of dead silence, there was an uproar. This battle was very short. In just 3 moves, Shen Mubai was defeated. Then, they thought of Yi Guqin's arrogant words. Now, who could still say that it was arrogant words? Some of the warriors present felt their cheeks burning. Some felt their faces hurt. However, most of them were shocked by Yi Guqin's strength. This. Han Lingxian was moved. She could not believe it. Shen Mubai, who even she could not defeat, was defeated by Yi Guqin in 3 moves. What was even more unbelievable was that Yi Guqin had not used his genuine qi or soul power from beginning to end. This was what everyone could not accept. Brother Dugu is so powerful. Han Xiaokui's eyes widened. Although she had confidence in Yi Guqin, it was still shocking to see it with her own eyes. Of course, among the 3 sisters, Han Ziqiang was the one who could not keep calm. Her body trembled and she was in a daze. The scene in front of her was like a dream to her. Yi Guqin, who she regarded as a useless person, defeated Shen Mubai, the supreme talent in her heart, in just 3 moves. Han Ziqiang's mind buzzed and she lost her soul because of the contrast between heaven and earth. This. Even Hua Tengfei's face darkened. Shen Mubai was his friend. To put it bluntly, Shen Mubai was his follower and henchman. As the saying goes, one has to look at the master before beating a dog. Yi Guqin knew that Shen Mubai was related to him, but he still defeated Shen Mubai in such a way. This made Hua Feiding feel ashamed. Thinking of this, Hua Tengfei looked at Yi Guqin with a hint of coldness. Yi Guqin, who was in the field, was not surprised by the result. The martial arts of the ancient god clan are indeed extraordinary. Yi Guqin sighed in his heart. With his strength as a 2-star ancient god and the martial arts of the ancient god clan, an ordinary heaven and earth spiritual bridge was no match for him. Perhaps only the supreme talents of the Sword Dynasty were qualified to fight with him. Shinmubai, it's over. Unfortunately, you can't take my head away. Yi Guqin said indifferently. Shinmubai, who was paralyzed in the pit, spat out a mouthful of blood. An endless sense of humiliation almost drowned his mind. However, he could not move at all and had no strength to continue fighting. Yi Guqin saw this and shook his head. He turned and walked in the direction of the Han family. Although Shinmubai was annoying, Yi Guqin could not really kill him with Shinlai around. However, at this moment, a cold light flashed in Hua Feidong's eyes. He waved his hand casually, and his genuine qi surged out. An extremely sharp sword light broke through the air from his hand and rushed toward Yi Guqin. This sudden scene caused everyone to be extremely surprised. The sword light tore through the air, and almost instantly, it swept behind Yi Guqin. Brother Dugu, be careful. Young Master Dugu. Han Xiaokui and Han Lingshuan's faces changed as they shouted. Yi Guqin's mind moved and a dreamlike sword light shot out from his body. It collided with Hua Tengfei's sword light and the sound of metal hitting metal could be heard. However, when the sword light appeared, it was as if it had been struck by lightning. Han Ziqiang froze on the spot as if she had been struck by lightning. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.